have been watching our sitcom?
Yes. Yeah. And I'm going to bring Pam in if you're ready.
What do you want to address?
1 minute?
One second. Do you want to?
1 minute?
Hey, are we in the wrong seat then?
No, because he's supposed to get the camera. He's using that camera. Okay, if you want to go get her, I'll address the crowd and open the meeting. Okay? First. Y'all ready? May I have your attention? Are you with this camera?
Yeah, it's going to be televised.
And also recorded for your download for the website, right? Thank you. Mr. Broughton with MTAS is going to get the first candidate, Ms. Pamela Caskey. She'll be in. We had a nice lunch. The commissioners and the staff and the candidates got to visit. Just a little bit of chit-chat of, where they're from and how their family matrix is. So we look forward to going forward in the interviews. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting and interview to order. The process is we'll have about an hour, maybe 50 minutes to an hour with each candidate. We have the microphones on. If anyone cannot, you want to grab that one? If anyone cannot hear, if you can just kind of do this throughout, we'll make sure that whoever may be speaking at that time is conscious of speaking up. And we'll have one-on-one as far as the interviewees coming in. We have questions that we'll be asking. And some of the citizens have participated in some of the questions, and MTAS has given us, and then, of course, everyone else has got the opportunity to ask as they see. So welcome. Thank you for being here. It's televised, and it'll be recorded if you want to watch it from your home at a later date. We're ready to begin? Thank you. Welcome. Hello, Ms. Caskey. Hi. Welcome. Great. Okay. I'll go ahead and get started, and just as Mr. Broughton has advised, some of the easier questions of communication, just to get to know you a little bit. So the first question is, could you provide a brief summary of your education and governmental work experience for us?
I have an undergraduate degree in political science from Tennessee Technological University. Good? Okay. My master's degree is from Bowling Green State in Northern Ohio in public administration. I have 20-plus years of experience in working with small local governments from 19 employees to 120 employees as the chief administrator or executive officer, depending on the state law comments. I also have experience working in Tennessee at the University of Tennessee's Municipal Technical Advisory Service, as well as regional experience working with a Council of Governments in Colorado. And I am currently consulting to a variety of clients in the profit and nonprofit sectors.
How does, if selected, how does being city manager in Fairview fit into your career goals, life goals?
I am, well, I have always been and always want to be a small community manager. Now, how do you define small? And that is an interesting question among the businesses that make a business of that. Some say anything under 50,000 is small government. I don't think under 50,000 is necessarily small. Under 25,000 is where I'd like to maintain my career. I particularly like small town life, and I like preserving small town life in communities that are seeing growth. And so I target when looking for positions, communities that will provide challenge, but that still offer that small town opportunity, and the challenge of trying to protect the small town values and the small town ambiance when a town is pressured by growth and other activities.
Following up on that, what did you do to learn about Fairview, and what are the things that impress you enough to want to move here and be part of it?
Well, I ravaged your website as much as possible, did quite a bit of demographic evaluation, both historical as well as current population changes, employment changes, those sorts of things. Did what I could to do newspaper searches, although that was a little more complicated than I'd like for it to have been. And I think the two things that really impress me, that make me say Fairview is a place I'd like to work, and more importantly, because they go hand in hand, also live. It's really nice to get a great job. It's really awful if the place you have to live is uncomfortable to you. Is your commitment to green space, your commitment to parks, your commitment to maintaining open space and that open, that public land type of environment, and also the commitment to manage growth. I've read many of your council minutes that are online, and I see that there's a great deal of discussion about how do you maintain sustainable growth and how do you maintain growth in a way that doesn't overwhelm the people that are already here.
Thank you.
Well, you mentioned green space, and as you did the research, the park is one of our main topics that we talk about a lot. If you were to be offered the job, what would your views on the park be in developing the park?
Well, first of all, I think there needs to be more than the park. I think the park is beautiful, but you need a combination of recreation and park amenities for a community of this size. So you need trails, you need open space, you need active recreational areas, and you need some place that's just there to be parkland. And so, you know, when you have a large, beautiful piece of property, as you do, there is a kind of a mindset of, oh, we gotta put stuff in it. And, you know, that's very credible. I mean, there's lots of things that people want in their community, and they need to go to the park to do that. Basketball courts, volleyball courts, playgrounds, swimming pools, gathering spaces, picnic pavilions, all that stuff. But in the attempt to do all that and make all those provisions, you don't want to rob people of what the real attraction is, which is for it to be open, beautiful, natural space. And so my goal would be to very carefully manage the overdevelopment of that space. And if there is a need for more active recreational areas, to find other places that could be as well as being in the park.
Could you tell us how that you have sought to improve your professional abilities in the last 2 years?
Well, first of all, professional development and lifelong learning has been a 35-year process for me. It didn't start in the last 2 years, and it certainly hasn't changed. My commitment hasn't increased or decreased. I've just been very committed to that. That said, I have, 3 years ago, undertaken working with an executive coach. And I maintain that commitment and will, when offered a position, hopefully in Fairview, to, at my own expense, continue to work with that executive coach to enhance my skills, to enhance my interpersonal relationships, to enhance my ability to resolve problems that develop, because anytime two people want different things, friction occurs. So I am absolutely committed to that. In addition, I have spent hours and hours listening to books on tape, all in the area of listening skills and critical thinking and human resource management, supervision, etc.
Along those lines, following up on that a little bit, can you describe for us what you would see as an ideal working relationship with the Board of Commissioners?
Very much. The first and foremost piece is open, honest communication that is non-judgmental. The best thing I can ask, there's a great parenting advice, and this is one of those places where the relationship is very appropriate. The best thing that a father can do for their children is love their mother. And the best thing that a board can do for their city manager is work well together. And if you collectively are communicating, talking out your problems, and not holding grudges against each other for personal, for philosophical differences, and respecting each other as people, and then if you do the same with me, and I do the same with you, we will have an excellent working relationship that will move the community forward.
Discuss your budget development processes, and what you have seen as key important factors.
I came from my first job in as a manager. I had left MTAS in 1987 at 29 years old. If somebody wants to do the math, they can figure out how old I am. I'm not embarrassed. And I went to Vermont, which has town meeting form of government. Now, my opinion about that is everybody ought to do it once, and I'm not sure, but more than fools do it more than once. Town meeting, for those of you who are not aware, is where, 300 or 400 people in my community of 4,000 get together to tell you what they think their community ought to spend on everything. There's a lot of talking and posturing and whatever. To their credit, I always found that the town meeting made good decisions. It was usually a lot of time spent getting to the end result. But one of the things that taught me was that absolute preparation was essential. I could not defend my decisions if I didn't understand everything that went into that. And when you're faced with 300 people asking you questions, you better be prepared to defend every single number in the budget. Because some people will pick on the littlest things just to trip you up because they think it's fun. Not because they don't like you, but because it's a sport. And so preparation is key. Talking to people about what they need, the citizens, the staff, and the council before preparing your budget is essential. And once you've accomplished all of that, then you are prepared to go forward. There's two philosophies for budget development. One is, let's figure out what we need, and then let's try to figure out how we're going to get the revenue to do that. And one is, here's what we project to get for revenues, and here's how we're going to shoehorn what we need into those revenues. Now, both approaches have their validity. I believe there is something in the middle that I try to approach. I try to project revenues, and then I try to create reasonable, appropriate budgets, because frankly, underspending doesn't get you high-quality services, which, if you want your citizens to be happy, you need to be able to deliver. So you don't want it to be so revenue-driven that you reduce the quality of your services. So you do that. And then you try to dovetail those two together in the discussion process with the community and with the elected officials. One of the things that I come from very conservative communities. One of the things that I have a strong philosophy about is we need to be conservative, but when you're growing, you do not need to wait so long to do capital improvements that it costs you more than it did when you could have done it easy. Great example. If you need to buy right-of-way for a highway widening, a street widening program, you want to do that before somebody else has put concrete there. You want to do that when it's still farmland or green space. Now that might seem like an unnecessary expenditure, but wouldn't you rather spend $1,500 for that 100 feet of right-of-way than $15,000 2 years later? So that sort of forethought and planning is really wise, even though at the time it might look a little on the excessive side, a wasteful side. That's kind of the philosophy. You want to spend money before it gets expensive. You want to be proactive. You want to provide good quality services. And I have been in a town as a manager who, when I got there, their service delivery was the bare minimum, and they paid a lot more than they needed to because of the economies of scale. Had they spent 10% more, they could have had twice as good a service just because of economies of scale issue. And we need to be mindful of those sorts of situations. And that's a real problem in small communities because economies of scale become an issue. And I think the last thing, I want to look for all the ways we can save money and still accomplish the same thing through the budget process. Whether that's working with the school districts to buy paper, because who buys paper more than the school districts? So why should we buy expensive paper when the school's getting it cheap? Silly, I know it sounds silly, but it's a very viable option in a lot of places. What can we do to share services regionally? You know, does everybody need a street sweeper, or can we share one among nearby communities, Thompson Station, or whatever? So those sorts of collaborative regional approaches can help small communities save money. As you get bigger, there'll be less of those opportunities, but in the beginning, they're a great place to look.
How do you plan on motivating senior staff?
Senior staff should be motivating themselves. And if they aren't, then we need to figure out why and what has demotivated them. Have they been here too long? Were they being too micromanaged? Were they not feeling appreciated? Did they not have clear goals and understanding and expectations? Once we determine that, we'll fix it. And if they're tired and they need to be moved on to new challenges, we'll do that. I've actually looked at an underperforming employee and said, you're bored. So my solution is I'm going to give you a whole nother department to manage. Because I think if I do, you'll be more excited about coming to work and you'll do a better job. And oh, by the way, it worked. He went from a marginal employee to an outstanding employee. I have also looked at people and said, you know what, you are so fed up with this organization, your only choice is to go find a new organization and start over. And sometimes all I've had to say is, wow, you're doing a great job, thank you. And that has turned around. Most of the time, senior staff are responsible for motivating others, and you shouldn't have to motivate them.
I think the largest budget item we have is police and fire department. How do you feel with managing that? Or what's your experience with managing it?
Yeah, I've had a police and fire department I've had a police department in every community I've worked in. I've had a fire department in 3 of the communities I've worked in. In Vermont, they had a fire district, so the fire department did not work for me. But I have a volunteer department in all 3 communities. I had a full-time fire department in 2 of those communities in addition to the volunteer department. They're expensive, they're necessary, and you have to find the balance between giving them what they need to do their job and letting their departments take over the budget process. And it's a tough balancing act, and without knowing specific issues, I wouldn't propose to comment on specific activity here. Suffice it to say, I have a lot of experience dealing with that. Sometimes I think I've done a really good job, and sometimes I'm sure I could have done a better job.
Just a follow-up question, that if federal government came in here and told us that we needed 15 policemen instead of 10 policemen, what would be your plan?
To ask the federal government why they thought they had the
Or
right
would
to.
they have a reason, population, whatever, the
Okay.
base went back, yeah. And they said we only have 10, they said you need 15.
If the community is satisfied with 10, I think I'd be starting with asking the federal government why they wanted to make those rules. Now, you know, if they have good reason, then I would sit down and talk with council about how we are, over time, going to get to that point. If council concurs and they're prepared to fund it, then, you know, we put the hiring notice up and we hire 5 more cops. But if the council's, and if the community is satisfied with it, then, you know, I think we need to work with the federal government or the state government to get there as the community is ready. Now, that said, 10 police officers. There's a threshold for cops.
I just gave you that as a number.
Okay.
Hours, that's just a
Yeah,
number.
okay. I was thinking you have more than that, but I was like, because there is a threshold by which, I mean, I've had 10 cops, and 10 cops is really tough, you know, and I've had 18, and 18 is just about the bare minimum you can get by with. And so.
Can you share with us what is the single most satisfying capital project that you were professionally responsible for and why it was so?
Not everybody gets this opportunity, and it happened to me once in my career. I hope someday it may happen again. I arrived in Alliance, Nebraska, population about 8,200. I think it was 89 by census, but it had declined like a lot of the Dust Bowl cities have. To find that there was a benefactor who had given the city $4 million to build a museum. And we had a small little museum, probably about the size of this room, in a corner of a park. And she had bequeathed, or not bequeathed, gifted a lot of her ranch belongings to the museum, and she wanted to build a suitable place to house those. And my second council meeting, we approved the contract, and I was pleased to help cut the ribbon before I left. My daughter got married in that facility a year or so later, and my grandkids were all pretty ecstatic to see the building Grandma built. But that building is gorgeous. It was a painful process. I knew nothing about museums, museum quality artifacts, museum quality HVAC systems, floodplain regulations when dealing with city parklands and municipal buildings, and, all of that. I mean, there was a lot of struggle and effort that went into that. But it is a beautiful building now that is very much used by the community and very much appreciated. Now, that said, I have also done $10 million worth of water projects and road programs and storm sanitary sewer separation projects and new line improvements and extensions and municipal building renovations. None of those have been as satisfying as building the new museum. That doesn't mean I didn't do them and they didn't get done and they weren't beneficial to the community, but.
Okay.
One of the questions I've got is, in the past, we've given direction to city managers in the past that were not followed. I'll just be blunt about it. And we were on a time frame that it just went on and on and on and on to no end. And I've got a problem with that. If you can't do it, tell me you can't do it. Don't tell me okie dokie or no problem. I hate no problem. We need somebody, I need somebody that'll stand up and tell me the truth about what the situation is. We can't, or this is what I need to do. At one time, we had like 20 projects on the table. Probably still do. And just no forward movement on a lot of them. And part of it was, we're working on it. It's in the planning process and the growth process. I just think, tell me you can't do it. And let me move on. Because, when we talk to people about a bridge over the park or something for senior citizens or whatever, the handicap accessibility, these people are looking for it. And I want somebody that's going to be honest with me and tell me what do you need, or we can't do it.
So, first of all, this is where I'm going to tell you, if you want to know those facts, check my references. I can sit here and tell you what you want to hear.
I'm looking at your references now.
Call them. Call them. Do you guys know who Larry the Cable Guy is? You know where he's from? He's from Nebraska. So he's a big Nebraska guy. And I hadn't been in Alliance but about a year when they started calling me Get Her Done. I didn't know how to take that at first, because when somebody said that, I kind of wondered if that was kind of a, but it turns out that, I was one of the first managers they'd had in a while that got it done. Now, let me tell you what I'm going to do for you as the manager. You're going to give me a list of projects that you want done in some sort of formal planning process that we're going to do whenever. And we're going to put that on a project management sheet. And there's several things on that project management sheet. What it is, who's responsible for it, the date that it started, that we put it on the list, the date we got started on it, where it is, and if it's off schedule, why it's off schedule. Are we waiting on a response from a landowner? Are we waiting for a response from a federal agency? Is it lagging because we had 12 snowstorms and we just haven't gotten to it? We're still looking for funding. There's all sorts of things that delay projects. But what there isn't in my administration is we forgot about it, we didn't take care of it, it's not important to us. Now here's the commitment I'm going to ask you. If you have a project that you want added to that list, that you, the council, commission, by motion, ask us to put it on there afterwards, so we know that it rises to the level of trackability. Because many times people will mention things in a meeting because it's not on that master list that we're working off of. We don't realize that it needs the attention that it does. But if you believe it needs that attention, you need to let us know, hey, we concur that this is important.
And this board does a pretty good job of that. Pretty good job working together with things like this.
What I always hate is where one person has a very pet project, it's only important to them, and then because we're not making it a priority, they get mad at me. And I will promise you that has happened to me. At which point, that's kind of how I got to the point of saying, if you collectively see this as a priority, I will do everything I can to make it happen. And if I can't, I'll make sure you know why. And I will give that to you in this size organization quarterly. Monthly is a little hard just because most of our folks are too busy to make progress on every major capital project every month. But over the course of a quarter, they ought to be moving everything in their organization along. The other thing that I will do for you is that if one department gets too many requests and they just can't handle everything that's coming at them, I will bring that to you and say, you have two choices. We can hire some staff so this person has more help to get things done, Or we can prioritize which ones you want them to focus on first, and we'll leave the other ones on the list, but we'll table them until they move the other ones forward.
Which is what we should be helping you do is prioritization of what we want to do. Okay.
And I'll bring that to you. I mean, I'll be proactive in asking you for that sort of help. I won't be sitting back saying you're not doing it, and I'll be asking you for help.
I have a question. If you could just tell us a little bit about your management style, how do you view yourself and your management style?
I'm a very collaborative manager. I'm a very team-oriented person. I like the teamwork. I believe that I'm the coach of the team, not the quarterback. You guys are the owners, if we want to use a football analogy. We know the goal is to win the Super Bowl, but I don't expect you guys to be sending in plays from the sidelines, and I try not to as well. But I am definitely, on the field helping, and not on the field, but on the sidelines pushing. If I gotta go play, I'll go play. It's a small town. So that's kind of, I'm not a micromanager. I want the staff to do what they need to do, and I want them to take that leadership role. I am forthright. I will tell you, if things aren't working, I'll find a way to tell you. I'll do my best to tell you as gently as possible. But staff couldn't expect to know where they stand with me. I think my references will tell you that, maybe in the beginning, if they're not used to that, it's a little like, oh, she criticized me, or she told me I was doing something wrong. But by the end of my time in Alliance, they were like, wow, it's nice to know where we stand. It's nice to know what the expectations are. And they were pretty comfortable with that.
How do you feel about accessibility from the public? For not only for the city manager, but for your department heads, police department, fire department, public works?
We are here to serve.
Thank you. I think it's very important.
And for what it's worth, I'd be really disappointed if I'm the Fairview city manager, if I didn't get talked to over choosing lettuce in Publix or Walmart at least once a month. I'd be really concerned that I wasn't doing my job. Which, by the way, is why I started using a BlackBerry a long time ago, because that's the only way I could remember what I had been talked to.
Well, I think we're a small enough city that we still want that. We want to be able to touch. We want to have input and direct input. And there's people, they tell me what they think every day. And that's good. I accept it well. But the department has to have it. Because I get asked questions about most all the departments inside it. And that's something I refer to you on. And because you're ultimately the city manager. And I look at it like you're the boss of the rest, and we're the boss of you. So
that's the way it
really
works.
simple.
we are public servants.
We have to support you in that.
That's it. We are public servants, and it is our obligation to be open to the public discussion, and wherever that be, should be transparency. I hate that word because it's become a buzzword. I hate buzzwords.
We haven't heard it lately.
The reality is, it's just ought to be the way. I don't know why we have to talk about it, because frankly, it ought to be what we're doing, and it shouldn't have ever been any other way to start with.
What about, give us a little background of the other cities you work for. As far as our charter, have they been mayor and commission charters, or I know you mentioned earlier.
So I worked under a town meeting form of government that had a town manager, the Board of Selectmen. It worked, the town meeting had budget control and zoning override in Vermont. They did not have zoning authority. They had zoning override. So if they didn't like what the selectmen did, they could go to town meeting and change it. but they allowed the selectmen to do it. And then in Pennsylvania, I was in the borough form of government that had a borough council and borough manager. And in those situations, the ordinances that implemented the managers were varied. In one of the communities, I could appoint department heads without council approval. In another one, I had to go to council for approval. In Alliance, it was probably the purest council manager form. There was no personnel input by city council and none allowed under the charter. I've had purchasing authority ranging everything from $1,000 in Vermont in 1987 to $25,000 in Alliance. We had an electrical utility. You couldn't wait for a council meeting to buy a new transformer. Or a substation part, So it was a fairly large organization. Yeah, I mean, I've worked in all ranges, so I have not memorized. I think I've glanced at the charter. It didn't cause me any concern.
But your last position in Alliance was a council manager
Yeah.
position, such as what our government
Yeah,
is.
and all of them have been, with just varying forms of, personnel. All of them had some budgetary authority, but personnel, it ranged, pretty widely in the 4 communities.
What is your experience with planning and zoning? Oh, sorry.
Just 1 second. Is there a way you can fix it unless somebody's really uncomfortable where the fan won't be on? I get a lot of complaints about when the fan kicks on, you can't hear very well.
Thank you.
And since it's been tough. good, thank you.
Experience with planning and zoning.
Planning and zoning is probably the one place that I feel very comfortable being the department head. Finance, planning and zoning are the 2 places that I feel like I could be the department head as well as the manager. I have a strong strategic planning background. Started as the first MTAS consultant in strategic planning in Cookeville, Tennessee, Gatlinburg, Fayetteville, Chattanooga, Sevierville. I did a lot of strategic planning in the 80s here. And as a result, I've carried that interest through in every community. The project management we were talking about kind of comes out of that strategic planning mindset. But increasingly, I have become much more interested in community development. And community development encompasses economic development, planning, zoning, neighborhood development, revitalization if necessary. Not an issue in Fairview, but it certainly was in Pittsburgh steel town of Ambridge. And what does it take to make the community work? And that's really the issue. Planning and zoning are just tools. They're really not the end result. The end result that you want is a neighborhood, a community that has neighborhoods and community infrastructure that works for the residents and visitors that live there. And comprehensive plans, design guidelines, zoning rules, zoning enforcement, subdivision regulations, all of those ordinances and programs are strictly tools to accomplish that bigger goal of maintaining that quality of life for the citizens. And so I've put a great deal of emphasis there. I strongly believe in design guidelines when possible. We're practical, want to make sure subdivision regulations are appropriate, zoning regulations are as up-to-date as possible. One of the things that I think is important, I think we as a community want to plan what we think about as our community, but we also don't want to be so prescriptive that we have people designing to a checklist. Because when you have a checklist, you tend to get the minimum standards. And many times, people would do more than the minimum standards if they felt open to do that. So where possible, we want to create the opportunity for them to do more, not dumb it down to where they do the minimum, and yet we want to set our standards high enough that we get what we want. And there's varying forms of zoning that allow that, but it usually takes a very flexible kind of zoning administrator, planning commission, and council.
I've noticed that you've had several different locations that you've been in, which is broader experience in my book, but how would you feel about a contract? What if we put you in and it's according to our charter, once you're put in the position, you're there for a year unless it's gross misconduct or something. And after that, we say, well, everything's going real good, just keep going. Would you want a contract after that period of time, which most people would or would not want? And if what kind of deterrent would that give you if we said no? We didn't give the last one a contract.
I have worked without a contract before. It's certainly not my preference. It's kind of like, I wouldn't want to jump out of an airplane without a parachute.
Landed. Go ahead.
Sometimes I kind of think of working without a contract as jumping out of a plane without a parachute. However, if I'm already in the plane and somebody's not giving me a lot of choice, and the plane's crashing, I think I'm going to jump. But, the reality is I've done it. It's not my preference. I usually have a great working relationship with the current council. It's people that are coming in that the next folks in that worry me, because I don't know who those folks are going to be. And sometimes in the elected process, you get people cross-rise with a decision that you may or may not have been able to make, or maybe they didn't understand, or maybe it wasn't even yours to make. And so contracts are protection.
I mean, I understand that people give up a lot to move and relocate families and everything.
Well, and I'm a sole provider.
I understand.
Yeah, I'm a sole provider, so
The contract, but
I'm the only person watching out for me.
Just a couple little housekeeping questions. I noticed looking at your resume that you spend 4 or 5 years generally at a job. Is that because you get bored, or is that because some circumstance beyond your control, or what kind of commitment would you think coming here you would want to be involved in?
I've always come into a community saying, I want to be there for as long as I can be. The exception to that was probably my first job, and I knew that as the first manager, I was probably going to make enough mistakes that I wasn't going to get to stay there too long. But frankly, I left because I was bored in Vermont. And each place I've left after that has had a different reason for leaving. Some good, some bad, to be honest with you. I'm not pulling any punches. I left Ambridge because the political situation got untenable for me. I left Northwest Cog because it wasn't a good fit from the beginning and they needed to move forward. And I needed to get out of 9,000 feet because elevation did not agree with me. Plain and simple. So my commitment here is I want to be here as long as I am challenged and as long as you want me. And knowing what's coming down the pike for Fairview, I don't know that I see myself not getting challenged long into the future. But at what point will, this organization body, probably not composed of the same faces I'm looking at, decide they want to go another direction, and I either sense that or they tell me loudly? I don't know.
You didn't say anything about Alliance. What was the deal with Alliance?
They have a 4-year run on managers. They've never had one serve more than 4 years, and they start getting antsy for people to move. And it became a situation where I got crosswise with a council member, and he let it be well known that I was going.
Just one more.
Go ahead.
How many jobs have you applied for? Is this your first move to get back out into the circuit, or have you been interviewing for a year or two, or what's been going on with that?
When I left COG, I took a little while to get healthy again once I left the altitude, because I really was physically pretty unhealthy. and started trying to do some consulting, and missed being in the workplace with other people. Guess I turned out I'm not much of a single person worker, and started looking for jobs in and around the Colorado area. Came into Tennessee on family stuff and said, why am I not looking back at home? And then relocated to Chattanooga from Colorado. My stuff, by the way, is still in Colorado. But I came here to help with some family situations and to help a family business, which is kind of what I've been doing in Chattanooga. And real estate business, by the way. And been applying for jobs. This is my second interview since doing that. I have interviewed in a couple of other areas. I interviewed in Sitka, Alaska, and that's all over the web. So I'll tell you now before you find it, just because I thought, wow, you know, interesting opportunity, and I wanted to try it. But they hired the right person for that job.
Thank you.
What about grant and grant application process, and give me any experience you may have in the grant process?
I'm going to be real straight with you. I will apply for every grant that I think we are eligible for that we need. I do not believe in going out to get grants just to say you got them, because oftentimes the grant drives the goals, not the community driving the goals, number one. Number two, I cannot work miracles with the granting agencies and their appearance of need. And if median income is a driver of who gets money and who doesn't, Fairview's not going to fare as well as Mountain City, you know? I mean, just straight out. When I was in Ambridge, Pennsylvania, I wrote over 20 grants and got over $1.5 million in grant funds. We had a huge need. You know, if you could put 3 articulate sentences together and come up with a good goal, you probably got funded, you know? Ambridge had $75,000 incomes, and we wrote 25 grants and got 2 of them funded. You know, so I'm not going to tell you that I can work miracles on the grant process, because a lot of it has everything to do with the perception of the community's ability to take care of their own problems. On the other hand, what does work is creating innovative ideas and having the staff to implement innovation. And when that happens, and if you have a council willing to support failure, because sometimes innovative ideas don't work, then there is opportunity for grant funds, but you got to be prepared for the failure of that if it doesn't work.
Share with me any background in marketing a community where you have a story of success.
Well, let's talk about 2. One is Ambridge had a huge brownfields problem. And we haven't talked a lot about that because there's not a lot of cross-correlation between Fairview and Ambridge. I mean, they're about as distinctly diverse communities as you can get. But we really needed to sell to the economic development people that we were serious about marketing our brownfields property and redeveloping them. And we were very successful in doing that. And that really came about from good marketing, and more than marketing, good planning and good publicity for the planning. Alliance, which, believe it or not, has a lot more in common with you than you think it does, other than it's not near adjacent to a metropolitan area. Some of the same growth issues, and that the Burlington Northern Santa Fe had a huge property there, huge, that was bringing in lots of people, and high incomes. We couldn't attract builders, we couldn't attract developers to build property, housing for the people that were coming in, and we couldn't keep the employees to support the other people in town besides the railroad. And so we went on a full-blown marketing campaign, and in fact used a Nashville firm to do that. And I learned a whole lot about the advertising and marketing business, not just to attract economic development activity, but also to attract people and commercial retail establishments. Got very involved in the National Council of Shopping Centers, et cetera. And since then, I've been doing a lot of marketing work for this private real estate firm I'm working with.
How do you handle lack of public trust in government?
You know, in 1987, public trust was pretty high. 2014, boy, it's not very. And that's a tough one. It's disappointing. Because you know what? Almost every municipal employee I know really wants to serve and be there. You occasionally get the ones that take advantage of things or doesn't. But as a general rule, they feel good about serving their constituents and their neighbors. And to see people that don't trust or trust that, you know, I think today most of the trust is that we're going to screw up and that we're going to waste their money and we're going to, you know, that's so sad for me. I alone can't change it, so I just have to accept it. And I have to do everything I can to lay my cards on the table, because doing that helps build trust. And the other thing that helps build trust is being true to your word. So I will try very, very hard not to tell somebody I will do something if I can't do it. In fact, I'm much more likely to tell them that it'll take me 5 weeks to get something done when I think I can get it done in 2. But if I build the expectation, you know, that it's going to take longer than it does, or that it's not going to be possible, but we'll do our best, and then we can make it happen, slowly I could start to create change in people's mind, at least about our organization right here and now. But there are no magic bullets, and I will not forever be able to fix that problem.
One of the, how do you handle conflict? You know, there's a lot of conflict. You'll have it, of course, with your staff. You'll have it with community members, and hopefully we wouldn't have it with Board of Commissioners, but it could be
It happens.
potential. So kind of give us an idea.
And I know we're under some time pressure, so there's 2 real things that I want to leave you with on that. One, there's something called backing up to agreement, and I use this a lot. And actually, your mayor talked about this earlier, let's find where we can agree. Let's not worry about where the contention points are. Let's worry about where the agreement points are. And a lot of conflict, and when I've taught strategic planning, that's what I teach. I call it backing up to agreement. You just keep stepping back from the point of conflict to find the place where we can agree. Gatlinburg's one-way traffic is one of those points. By the way, they still don't one-way traffic in Gatlinburg, but we finally, in the Gatlinburg strategic plan, got people to agree that traffic was a problem and we needed to do something about it. Nobody could agree on how to fix it, but they could agree it was a problem. That was the best we could do, but that was at least a starting point. So that's one way to manage conflict. The second way to manage conflict, that's when it's idea-based. But there's another point of conflict, and that's when people feel bruised by other people. And one of the ways that I try to deal with it is to hear them. And I don't just try to hear their ideas. I try to hear the fact that they're bruised. And I try to recognize that I maybe completely unintentionally hurt their feelings. Maybe I completely misread something they were saying. Maybe they felt slighted, whatever. And I try to deal with that issue, because once that can get pulled out of the way, oftentimes the rest of the conflict can be gotten rid of pretty easily. Otherwise, once again, you know, I've said it maybe, and you know, you may get tired of hearing it from me if you hire me, but there aren't any magic bullets. Sometimes you just got to keep working at it till you get it right.
Ask the last question, unless someone has something specific.
I do not.
Thank you.
And the last question for you, Ms. Caskey, is why should we hire you as our next city manager for Fairview?
I believe the skill set I bring in terms of growth management, commitment to small town values, the ability to manage finances conservatively but smartly, are the skill sets that you need the most of. And skill set's one piece of who you ought to be hiring for your manager. The next probably the most important thing that you want to hire for your manager is a person who is honest, who's ethical, and who's committed to the community. Now, I recognize that you have some locals that you're interviewing, and I can't commit with their commitment. I can't tell you I've been here for 20 years loving this town. But what I can tell you is that the minute you offer me this job, and I accept, Fairview will be my hometown. And it will be the town that I want my children to feel proud of, my grandchildren to want to come live where Grandma is, and your children and grandchildren to be committed to. I believe that if that works for me as a person, if I work to achieve that, then I will be successful in showing the community my commitment to this community and to love Fairview as much as every one of you do. And I always pick one or two people out in the community who have been there forever, and I judge my standards by whether they believe that I care about their community. And when I've achieved that, I know I've achieved something. You can talk to the Thomases in Vermont and the Vogel sisters in Ambridge and the Hoffs in Alliance, and they will all tell you that they never questioned whether I loved their town. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I have appreciated how warmly you've welcomed me.
Nice to meet you.
I look forward to talking with you more.
Thank you, Ms. Pamela. I'm going to take a 2-minute break.
Do we have to ask the exact same?
Ask whoever's speaking to speak up, make sure everybody can hear. And we want to welcome Mr. Frank Humber. And we have just some assortment of questions. And again, we do want to welcome you to Fairview and thank you for your interest in the community.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me to come.
We'll begin with just kind of as Jeff calls it, a kind of a volleyball question, but could you provide us a brief summary of your education and governmental work experience?
Okay. Well, I attended Columbus State University in Columbus, Georgia, and I graduated with a degree in political science. Then I went to the University of Tennessee and got a master's in planning. From there, I went with the city of Cookeville, and I was director of planning and community development there. After I was there 8 years, and then I went with a consulting firm, Barge Wagner, Sumner and Cannon, that I worked for 2 years with in Huntsville. And after that, I went to the city of Childersburg, Alabama, where I was a city administrative planner, and I was there 8 years, and then I went to Jefferson County as director of land development, and I've been there for 18 years.
Can you share with us, Mr. Humber, how being city manager in Fairview fits into your career and life plans?
Okay. Sure. I think being city manager here would be a great challenge because you are going to be a growing city. There's a lot of people here that are very interested in that growth being done well and growing in an appropriate manner. So I think that's, I think it's sort of I see most of the time, I see the things I've done in the past as sort of a preparation for, this job, because with the manager for 8 years, and with the planning background I have, I think those things could be, I think it's very important experience. But I think this would be a good place to come, a good place to live, and I have family here too, and that's important. But I really think that this is just a place where things are going to be happening, and I think helping those things happen in the right way would be a great challenge.
How long do you see as your commitment? I believe you were with Jefferson County for quite some time.
18 years, yes.
Do you plan to finish out your working career here, or are you?
That would be my plan, right? It would be, and I would generally 10 years. 10 more years is what you never know what will happen, but that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if we're to this point, but I'll go ahead. One of the questions I wanted to ask about is our park, Bowie Nature Park. I'm sure you've done some research in preparing, and hopefully you have found that this is kind of the crown jewel of our city.
Yes, yes.
And a lot of time is spent discussing this matter. So my question for you is, what would your views as far as developing the park, non-development growth, how do you see our park in 10 years? Or what would be your thought process about what we consider our crown jewel?
Right, okay. Well, the park certainly is a tremendous community asset, and since, Dr. Bowie, she donated the property to the city, I think it is to the city, right? Well, I think that is such an attraction and such a marketing tool that you have here to attract people to move here. I've got, in Jefferson County, we did, a few years ago, we did a survey of, actually we were assisted by the Trust for Public Land in doing a survey about greenways and open space. And I think it's sort of I'll leave this if I want to thumb through it, but you can see basically it's the kind of thing where people sort of identified what they thought would be what they considered important in those things regard, and of course a park with the nature trails you have and all of the amenities there, I think is very attractive. I think you can be proud to have after you see what people identify as being important to them. You can see that, Bowie Park is very important. I think that one of the things, though, that could be looked at would be the access to the park. Is there possibilities for additional access, maybe even if it's just pedestrian and bikes? But I think it's a tremendous asset, and I think, of course, you want to preserve it. And when I've read about it, it's been very well preserved, and you're very conscious of what goes on there and what doesn't go on there, and I think that's very good because a lot of people today are really drawn toward that open space, and they don't want the yard, but they want the open space and the park, close by, and I think that makes you a very much more attractive community than a lot of communities. Of course, being in Williamson County is very attractive, but that park definitely is. I think just kind of keep going in the direction you're going with the park, and then maybe add some things to it, like some bike trails that come to it, or hiking trails that come to it, or, those kind of things. It's sort of like you're making it more accessible, and so it's utilized. I'm sure it's utilized now, but I mean, it's definitely to have greenways and open space like you do, then I think that's exceptional. In Jefferson County, we just in the last few years, put together Red Mountain Park. It's 1,100 acres, and Bowie Park is 725 or something like that. So, your park is, and everybody was so proud of how big this park was, but, when you have as much as you've got, that's a tremendous asset.
Inside a city of this size.
That's right, in a city of this size, it really is. That's right. That's right.
Can you tell us or describe for us how you think a perfect relationship with the Board of Commissioners, what it would look like and what you would do to facilitate that?
Okay, sure. There's a couple of things that it's very important, the relationship I have with the commissioners. But let me just say this. Basically, I'm all business. I'm family oriented, and I like to have open communications with the commission. And I've dealt with a lot of different public officials, elected officials, and I've had anywhere from a county commissioner that I worked for that had to get an appointment to see her, to when I was in Childersburg, Alabama, the mayor worked at a paper mill, and he would work second shift, or sometimes he'd come in at night and look at all the stuff on my desk and tell what's going on. So I've had different, but what I see here is being communications being really improved, and where you have access to me, but also to information that I think would be, important. Okay. But so I think if the commission, the mayor have one of the things I've done, for instance, is a calendar of all of my activities. And, if you have access to the calendar, you can see what I'm doing and what I'm going to be doing, and of course, you'll know a lot of that anyway. But I think, sort of giving you tracking of what I'm doing, I think is good. I think it's good for you to keep up with. And then, of course, we can have one-on-one. But I really think let's use the technology to stay, closely in touch. And of course, I would be, 24/7 as long as I'm here in town. I think working, and another thing too, I guess about me and working with the commission. I'm a person that I really like public relations. I like speaking. I like public speaking. I like being in a position to represent the city at times at different functions. I like also being part of outside groups like the chamber and and even if there was a Kiwanis Club and the things like that are going on. I like to be part of the community. But another thing too about direct with the commission, I like to manage meetings. And I'm not saying the commission meetings, but I'm saying I like to have, when I've done all kinds of different, ways of managing. But for instance, if we have a meeting on the plan of services for an annexation, I like to be able to get up, explain it to the people there, and give them the background on what they need for them to ask questions about and answer questions for them. But of course, you would be there answering the questions and asking questions and doing those things. But I found that a lot of times if I can basically tell people what the purpose of the meeting is, have people even sign up to speak, give them the rules to say, look, you've got so many minutes to speak, and then stick to something new when someone else comes up, and don't repeat what's been said and those things. I think people like to have a well-run meeting, and that's one of the things I've done, and I have a lot of experience with. So, I would work with the commission like you want to work with, whatever way you want to work with me. But those are some of the things that I really like to do. And I had a mayor in Childersburg that he'd like for me to go wherever he went to speak and introduce him, because he always said I did a better job of introducing him than he did. You know, he really didn't want to pat himself on the back. But I mean, even things like that, I enjoy doing. I don't, you know, I really like to see things flow well and concise, but give everybody an opportunity to participate. But I think if it's organized, I've found that the more organization that goes into meetings, sometimes the better the response. We held community, I mean, even neighborhood meetings we held on our comprehensive plan, and we didn't have a formal sit down and just talk. We divided up. We had these stations around the room, like in a gymnasium or something, where we'd have a series of maps that people could just, as they came in, they could break off, and we had a staff person at each one, and they would talk to them about their property, what the plan is, it's more of a hands-on thing rather than getting up and just speaking, you know, just speaking on and on about, you know, things that people like to get down to the specifics. And of course, they're interested in their property, you know, so I really like to be involved in things like that, so.
Can you discuss your budget development process with us?
Okay. The budget, one of the things I have this is a budget review that was done, you know, several years ago that I did for my department. The budget for the department was about $3 million in. What I like to do is basically, this is not something that was required by the county. This is something that I put together, that I like to give sort of a description of things we've done in the past year, things we're looking at doing. I like to remind everybody of our organizational chart. And then basically you get down to a budget that's a simplified form. You know, a lot of times I know with the county we have some pretty complex looking forms. It's not easy to read. But I'd rather have something, though, that's easy to read and you can go over it. This is something, too, that you can see these. I like to do things like this pie chart where this shows you take the budget year and the time that was spent on all of these functions, and you show what percentage that was of the department's time, or it could be the city's time, where you're showing. People have a picture that is much easier to understand than just figures a lot of times. And so I like to come in. No. I'll take it. Yeah, I see what you're saying. But anyway, I like to come in and then have, in different sections, I come up with different functions that people, what they basically do is they keep up with their time. I have a software to do it. And they put down week by week how much time they spend on doing certain things. And I think that gives you a good idea of how the money's being spent internally. But also with budget, one thing I think is very important is to have a monthly financial statement and a balance sheet. That's what I've worked with in the past, and I think you having that monthly financial statement, you're kept up to date with how things are going. I think it's good to have that kind of a report. It doesn't have to be a hard copy. It could be available on at a site where the commission and the mayor could access it at any time, or if you wanted to make it public after a certain period of time, or whatever you'd like to do. But I really believe that helps you to track what goes on. Now, as far as the budgeting process, though, this is an example of a capital improvements budget that I put together for the county. It actually has something like $50 million in improvements or in capital projects in it. But what I wanted to show was that actually I think the capital budgeting process should be like year-round. I think that's something that you should start. Yours is from July 1st to June 30th.
Yes, sir.
So I think it's something that you'd want to start in the fall with your capital improvements budget. You want to start out and sit down, take a look at it. This is basically covers 5 years. it's things you see that are done, would be done in 5 years, or 4 years, or 3 years, or 2 years, of what you're trying to do that next year. But I think if this, one of the things I think has been difficult for a lot of elected officials I've worked with, you know, when somebody comes in with, it'd be a great idea and this will be a project we want to do, but and everybody gets on board with it, but then funding that may be taking funding away from something else that you really need to be looking at. But I think even if you have, and what you'll find is, you know, doing this capital improvement process, which you would, one of the ways I've worked with it was with a committee, and you sit, and this lists the committee of people. It's basically department head and commissioners, but really it could work in any way, but you would have submissions given by each department. Then you would have a committee that sits down and somewhat organizes those and put them together. And then I like to put together this all on one page as a summary of that one project. Shows a map of where it is, shows you what the cost will be, describes it, and what it does is give you, you know, if you've got this in your hand, then you can think, this is where we're going, this is what we need to be doing. And it's a whole lot better than if something comes up and say, we need to spend money on this. And you know, if you've got something that needs to be added, then add it in by process. But the committee would basically meet, they would go through the process of putting together a summary. Then you could hold public hearings on it. You could have a lot of this vetted, you know, just before you adopt a capital improvement program. I just think a capital improvement program takes longer in its preparation than just a regular budget. So I think that's the way I approach the budget.
How many cities, I'm sorry, how many cities were in Jefferson County?
There's almost 40 cities. I think there are 40 cities.
How'd you communicate as the contact or administrator between the cities inside the county?
You mean with their administrators? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it's just direct. I talk to them directly. And basically, even though we have 40 cities you still only have about 14 or 15 that are of significant size. Incorporated. And we have some that are incorporated that are really small too, but I think it's, there's a Mayor's Association that I attended, and there's also the Regional Planning Commission was a place we had a lot of interaction with administrators in the cities. So there's communication lines there, and you know, that's what but you have to be able to consult with your cities. And even when we did a rezoning that was next to a city, we notified the city. One of the things we've done in Jefferson County, well, I've done with my department, is I have a pretty large network of notice. You know, when I have, and the cities are included, if I've got my commission agenda items, my planning commission items, even the BZA items, all those things are sent to the cities or made available to them. And then that way, they can find out about something before it happens, and they can have some warning. And then, of course, from time to time, they have input, which I think is, you know, is important. Because when you work for the county, you want all your cities to be successful, and you want to be able to provide them. The rest of it has really been like information I've given them. The other things I've done is I've done some work with ordinances pertaining to cell towers, landscaping, stormwater management, and, well, mining, coal mining too. But a lot of the, yeah, I know. But I mean, a lot of the cities are interested in seeing what, you know, when we put together something like that, we basically negotiate those things with the industry. Then we have something the cities can take and run with it if they want to, or, you know, we try to give them some guidance and try to be, if they want to be consistent with what we're doing, then, you know, that's good.
I just feel like that the cities and the county really need to work together.
They do.
So, you know, I need somebody that's willing, I would like to have somebody that's willing to move forward and go that extra mile with the county.
Yeah.
And I would expect them to do the same thing, but thank you.
Sure.
The org chart you shared with us is pretty large.
Yeah.
Do you determine how many people that you have within your organization, or does that come from the folks you work for?
Well, I determine how many people, but it's, of course, approved or disapproved by them. You know, so I mean, ultimately, they do. But,
One of the problems or challenges, not necessarily a problem, one of the challenges that we have is that we have a city that's growing.
sure,
And as we grow, our request for services grows.
right,
And so having the right number of people in the right number of places to provide proper public safety, to provide proper community services, to manage our park system, all of that stuff is a never-ending battle.
right, sure.
And the hiring, firing, disciplinary actions in our organization belong to the city manager.
Sure, sure.
Exclusively to the
Right.
city manager.
Right, right.
In your organization, who does those things? Does all those things rise to your level, or are
Yes,
they
they
done
do.
by subordinate?
They rise to my level. All of those things of hiring, firing, disciplinary actions, of course, I do those. Now, the county has only recently, in the last 3 years, adopted a commission county manager form. And now the county manager, of course, is the appointing authority, or the, chief executive officer. Before, we had commissioners who were chief executive officers over certain departments. So for the most part, though, I pull all of the, I'm the one who works with the attorney's office on disciplinary, do the proper notice, go follow what the rules say, and have it ready for a commissioner to look at and make the final decision. So, but as, as manager, of course, I would do that. But I would want definitely the involvement of the department heads in any of those things, hiring, firing, or disciplinary. My general practice is to lean on their thinking a great deal at times. And like I said, I don't know the department heads here, but I think you need to let a department head have that kind of authority in order to do a good job and be effective.
Thank you.
That question, what would you say your management style is?
I'm a bully, but no. I would say it's more of what I like to do is to help people sort of put together what they need to be doing, I like to help the department head set up his own organizational chart, or I like to really try to get people involved in it, supervisors, department heads, involved directly in day-to-day operations. But, of course, I'm there to handle anything that they, that would be in support of them, or something that if I have to deal with one of them, then I would deal with them. But really, I look at it more like I'm sort of coaching. But another thing I wanted to say, too, is that one of the things I found out about employee relations is, like I said before, I'm family-oriented. One of the things I've done with my employees in all of these jobs is I basically told them that your family comes first. And so I'm looking for, we in my department, we in the cities I've worked for, we back each other up. We want to have a sense of people backing each other up. So when you need to take care of something for your family, that needs to be done. But we need to have it set up so you back them up. A lot of people have responded to that very well. Also, in team building, one of the most effective ways of team building has been for employees in a department or the whole city would be to contribute. For instance, our department every year has found a family in need and given them Christmas. And it has nothing to do with expenses to the county. It's people contributing. And I think if those people, when I found that people working together on things, not to be distracting from what they do, but if they're doing things that are meaningful and important, I think they feel part of a team.
Commissioner Scott?
He's already answered it. As far as that part right there is, the most important asset that I believe that any city has is employees.
Sure, sure.
And longevity of employees is very important, in my side,
Right,
because
right.
turnovers are costly.
That's right.
I don't care how you look at it. And, you know, one of my things I would look for in a city manager is someone that can maintain the longevity, whenever possible. You know, you do what you need to do, and if you fix the problem, you can fix it. If you can't fix it, you get rid of it.
Sure, sure.
That's what you gotta do, but you gotta
Right.
try to fix it first.
That's right, sure.
And, to me, for employees that work here, most of them live here, to me, that's very important. People that, I've supervised a lot of people and a lot of
Oh,
years
sure,
now.
sure.
And you get loyalty by giving loyalty. I think that's part of
right.
the problem that we have in America now. We don't have the people that are loyal to a company for 30 years, and their mama that worked there and their daddy worked there and everybody that's worked. Now I think I read an article the other day that most people that are 45 have had 5 jobs.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's not there, and I think we should get back to that, those values of making people feel important and doing what they need to do. So.
That's right. I have, well, one thing along that line, I have a employee handbook that is not just the, it's not just the adopted rules that the county has, but I put a lot of other things that I've added in there. I think one of the things that I like is, in terms of procedures, is to have a handbook, and you let people know this is what's expected, and you let people know that this is the way I want you to conduct yourself when somebody comes in the door, when you answer the phone. I think a lot of people feel like, now, as far as your existing employees, I come into a situation like this, giving people the benefit of the doubt. In other words, I'm going to work with you to do your job. I'm not going to come in and read everybody's resume or something and say this person's not qualified and that one's not. I'm going to say this is the job to be done. Let's do it. And if it takes my help, that's fine. But I give people the benefit of the doubt because I'd rather have the person who's there in the job performing like they need to, you know. And of course there's and it's in my handbook there's some things like, you know, I'm very mindful of outside employment. I don't want people conducting business on city time or county time. I want your attention focused here. You know, when you're here, and like I said, family's important, but when you're here, I want you focused. And if you need to go take care of outside things, then you take time off to do that. But that's one of the things I feel like I think they really like to have some structure. They like to be able to, you know, read what is expected. And I'm not saying I would do the same detail here with the city of Fairview, but with certain employees, I did things like dress codes and a lot of things that just I felt like needed to be done. Because I expect a higher standard. I know the other day, I was in a meeting of department heads with the county, and the county manager was saying something about retraining our employees to be courteous and to be attentive and to handle people appropriately. And all I said was, when would you like for my employees to come train yours? Because I've got people, I think, that, you know, they perform very well, and they do care. And this thing about, you know, being rude to people, that's not something that I tolerate. Well, and it doesn't matter whether you're, you know, a lifeguard or you're here at the desk. I mean, it's the same thing. You got to conduct yourself in a way that you represent the city, and you need to be the city's spokesman at that point in time.
Thank you.
I already know. The other question, and I'll just be consistent. Grants. How much experience do you have in the grant process? And tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, sure. I did, one of the more recent things in the grants was, we did FEMA money, and I know you don't have the problems that Jefferson County has, but we actually did a flood mitigation program because we have flooding, and we were able to get FEMA grants to do things like buy out people's property that continuously flooded and to do some structures as far as, you know, flood control. That's the more recent experience I have. Now, going back to, well, I've done this type of grants with the county. Going back to Childersburg, I did all of the CDBG work, the small cities grants. We had a utility board that was separate from my, you know, authority, but I actually did the grants for them too. I did them and administered. Now, in Cookeville, they had, when I went there in 1977, they had a very outstanding grant program with federal money. They maximized getting federal money at that time, and they brought in, I learned a lot. I picked up a program that was well in progress and carried it on. And we built streets, we built police buildings, we even built a theater. We did, and what I liked about we did, you know, rehab work, we did utility work. But what I liked about that, the things there in Cookeville, what I'm proud of is that grant money that we spent, for instance, I don't know, this goes way back, but if you've ever heard of the Model Cities program, a lot of cities got Model Cities funding, and then today they have nothing to show for it. You know, you can go to Cookeville, Tennessee, and you can see things we made, improvements we made with Model Cities money. I like for stuff to go in the ground. I like for it to be. I don't like to spend money on, you know, studying something to death, or I like to have, and for instance, with my flood mitigation program, you know, I have the records I kept very careful, and all of the money that was allocated for this program went directly toward the projects we had. It wasn't something that I burned up in my budget on administration or anything. And along that line, I guess I should brag a little bit. Our floodplain mitigation program actually was awarded from the Association of State Floodplain Managers in 2005. The James Lee Whitt, who was the FEMA, he was the director of FEMA for a long time, a local award of excellence. And I know that's not a very good copy, but that was an award we got. We went to, you know, Wisconsin and received it. The commissioner and I did. And that, I think, you know, because I think our approach was comprehensive. But as far as the grants, you know, go, I think we need to maximize what we can get from grant money. And to do that, you have to keep up with what was going on with the state and other places. Part of the success I had in Cookeville was I dealt directly with the congressman and the senator's offices, not those people in particular, but their office. I know I got some jobs bill money one time with Senator Baker's office. Of course, I worked with Al Gore's office and getting, if the community's ready and shows production and getting grant money spent in a timely fashion, you can generally get the support of elected officials to help grease the skids.
When you show them a good plan.
That's right, a good plan, that's right.
How about experience with planning and zoning?
Okay. The planning and zoning aspect, a couple of things that pertain to, of course, what I want to cover, most importantly, the things I see that pertain to Fairview. And I'll put this together with a couple of other things too besides just a plan, but this is a comprehensive plan that we put together a few years ago. We did a plan with, you know, so several elements. One of those elements that I think is really important to a city like Fairview was a major road plan. I did a major road plan in Cookeville that was at least partially implemented. But of course, my plan that I did way back then has been taken and revised, and that's what it should be, you know. But we do watershed plans in Jefferson County now, and we put together a major road plan for this particular area to develop. And I think it's important to be able to say, here's where we want our it doesn't necessarily, it's not just necessarily the major arterials, but even your collector streets and minor arterials and those kind of things. If we've got a plan that's adopted that shows where we want these streets to be, when somebody comes along and develops property, then we can keep that reserve of that right of way. We don't make a developer build a street bigger than what he needs. We're not saying that. He didn't build that portion of the road, but we get the right of way. Or at least, in some cases, we've gotten additional setbacks so we could acquire the property. But the main thing is to accommodate it with new development, so eventually you can put together the pieces and join that together. Now, planning, one of the big things that I think in Fairview that's needed is smart code. Smart code we adopted in, it's been about 4 years now. And when we adopted the smart code in Jefferson County, I don't know whether you've ever heard of Andre Duaney, who's the expert on smart code in the country. He sent us a congratulations email saying, because we were the largest county at that time to adopt smart code. Now, some of the things about our comprehensive plan is based on a smart code. This is a map that shows a little better map of that watershed I was talking about. In the smart code, it's a form-based zoning, but basically what it means in sort of day-to-day terms is that you're planning villages, you're planning what we call hamlets, and then you're planning nodes. And adopting the smart code, which this is what we adopted. It has a lot of different, it has environmental standards, it has a lot of design standards. It's something that you would take, and you could take this model code, and what we would do would be fully vet it to fit Fairview and say this is the kind of thing we want. Now, what we found was that right now, or what we do in Jefferson County, we offer this as an alternative to a developer. Okay? So, and the developers that we've had several that have opted for this because they feel like that gives them more flexibility. But what it does is it does give you a way to have input into a certain standards that you want, certain type of development you want. You want things that, and this I think really is what a lot of people are attracted to. I've noticed in your zoning code you have a planned unit development, right, overlay. That's good. That generally deals with one development. Smart code is you can basically use it citywide. And you can take, I know one of the success stories we had with it was we had and of course, I know Jefferson County is a lot different than Fairview, but we actually had a village plan. We had someone who came in at an intersection where we'd identified where a village should be. These people wanted to build apartments. Like I said, it's different than Fairview, and everybody, normally the reaction to apartments is the people around and surrounding in the area and all, it's just absolute no. We held a series of community meetings, put together a plan to show where those apartments would go. Here's the plan. Where the apartments would go, which I believe were here, and where the commercial would go, where we would have higher densities. And so these people, all these property owners, they bought in because they wanted to have their property to market according to this. This was a place where nothing existed. And, I'm not saying that's what we do here, but that is a way of implementing it. But the key is that we had the property owners meet and agree this is what they wanted to do. What we would do, before we set up a plan like this in Fairview, it would be, fully vetted. We'd have people come in and look at, the property owners come in and see this is what you've got in mind for your property. You know what I'm saying? That's what it all depends on, because planning, it depends on what the people support. If they don't want it, it ain't gonna happen. I don't believe in putting plans on the shelf, something that looks good, and put it on the shelf. I'm implementation oriented. And one of the reasons that this job's attractive is because I feel like as city manager, you know, I know I have a planning background, but as city manager, that really opens up a lot more doors in terms of implementation than just being the city's planner.
Can you tell us a example where you have improved on process using automation in your past professional experiences?
Okay. Yeah, there's been several. I'm trying to think of well, let me see. We've done of course, we've done a lot of mapping advances, and we've done a lot of other things. But as far as automation, I guess a good example would be we have zoning inspectors that go out in the field every day, and we equip those people a couple of years ago with laptops, and so we put on their laptop the zoning code, the subdivision regulations, stormwater, whatever, and they've got, plus the zoning map, they've got that information out in the field. I mean, I know Fairview's a different scale. I mean, your inspectors learn your city and they pretty well know it throughout, but I think if somebody can take if we can put that in their hands, while they're out in the field, they can do things that much more effectively. And it saves time and it saves money, and of course you get a lot more, you know, accomplished with automation.
I have another one. This is going to be quite a step down compared to the size that you're coming from. Do you think that you could see yourself long-term challenged here if the growth is not as quick as maybe what you've experienced?
You mean, what, do I have a problem adjusting from the mere size?
From this, you're
Yeah.
obviously
Right.
coming from a county that.
Right, right. Well, I really wouldn't have a problem adjusting to the size, because, and this is the reason. You know, a lot of the things that we talked about here, neighborhoods, communities, villages, and those things, you know, we just do a lot more of that in the county, but we would do it here too. I would do it here. You know, it's not like, it would be a different scope of work, but it'd still be some of the same things needed in both places. People still want the same amenities, you know, where they live, and that's really what dictates what I do. So I don't think it'd be a problem.
How do you, or have you in the past, dealt with the lack of public trust in government?
That can be something that's it's difficult, because Jefferson County, I don't know whether y'all know, but we just came out of bankruptcy. And to say the least, there was a little lack of public trust there with the county. It really didn't have anything to do with my department. It was a sewer warrants or sewer bonds and those kind of things. But I think a lot of people feel like there's a couple of things that people, I think, are looking for with trust. When somebody comes into City Hall, you know, there's really two things that I think people are entitled to. And one of those things is they're entitled to an explanation. You know, in other words, if they come in and say, how's my property zoned, or why is my business license cost me this much? They're entitled to an explanation of how that's determined. They're also entitled to be heard about what their opinion, or how they feel about it, and I think those are two things you owe to the people. I think that's one way of building trust. Of course, it's on an individual basis. The other thing, I think, is really sort of, in my experience, has been like meeting and going into neighborhoods and meeting, going into communities and meeting. And I think a lot of people feel like if you make that effort to go to them, then they have more trust. But public trust right now is down overall. So there's a lot of tough situations. But I think the one thing to restore or one thing to carry on that trust is to be transparent. And I like thinking, my thinking is, as far as public information, is that I think it's important to identify what's not public information, and that should be a very short list, and the rest should be, public information. I don't know whether Mr. Cantrell would agree with that, but I mean, that's my thinking. That I think if people have access to information, they feel much more like they can trust you. And I've stood up in front of a lot of people and given them bad news, but I think if you're honest and straightforward with people, I think they do it. Overall, the trust is a difficult thing, though.
One other question I wanted to make sure I got in. How do you handle conflict?
Conflicts of between?
Well, it could be board, it could be citizens, it could be employee.
Evaluate your ability to deal with conflict.
Okay. A couple of things. When I deal with conflict, I like to listen to both sides, obviously. And if it's a conflict I've got with someone, then, I'm going to explain to them what my position is, and I will listen to what they have to say, but, when I make a decision, it's what I go by, And from time to time, there's going to be conflict, but I think if most of the time you can diffuse it by having somebody to be able to vent what they're trying to say or vent what's on their mind, then you can generally get them back down to what's, practical. Conflict is not something that I shy away from because it's something that's got to be dealt with, I think, quickly. One of the things in a conflict, if there is a conflict brewing between me and the commission and the mayor, I think establishing what my position is as quick as possible helps. But now I will say one thing about decisions made by the mayor and commission. As manager, I would, according to the charter and so forth, I would have an opportunity to make recommendations. But regardless of what my recommendation is, once a decision's been made by the commission, then I will take that and run with it. And it doesn't mean I'm out bad-mouthing that. I'm saying this is the way we're going to do it, and I'm happy to do it that way. So sometimes conflicts is hard to, that's sort of a broad subject, but most of the time, I think if you can handle it quickly before it festers, in most situations you can diffuse it.
Great. We're going to pass the last question unless someone has something. Terry? Frank, why should we hire you as the next city manager of Fairview?
I'm businesslike. I have integrity is very important to me, and I'd like to, I'd like to work for a city like this. I think I have a lot to bring to the table. I don't think that there would be some learning on the job, but I think that a lot of it, I've got a lot of background in it, and I like to be. If you want a person that wants to be out front in the community, meeting people, greeting people, not stealing the thunder of the commission, not going out and committing the city to something, no, but showing that you've got somebody here who is, accessible, approachable, and somebody who will listen. I know sometimes I talk a lot, but a lot of times I like to just listen. And I think Fairview's, with the amenities you've got here and in your location, it's tremendous. I've seen a lot of different places, but this is very nice. You're in a great county. You're in a great metropolitan area. You're you know, you're in a great location physically, you've got all these, and, you know, your park and all the things that, you really have a lot of potential, so the reason I want to be the city manager, because I would enjoy it.
Thank you very
Sure.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all your visuals. That was very helpful. Yeah.
Sure.
That was great. Great.
As Mr. Hooper gets his things together, we'll have a little short 2-minute break or so. Thank you all for your attention. Candidate number 3, Mr. Michael Walters Young. We welcome you. Appreciate your information that we're going to leave. We'll start with a kind of starting question, and if you can share with us and the public, please. Over to it. Provide a brief summary of your education and governmental work experience.
Yes, ma'am. Well, good afternoon. As the mayor said, my name is Michael Walters Young. I am a 17-year veteran of local government. I have both my bachelor's and master's degree in public administration from the University of Kansas at Lawrence. I am a former member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. I am a current member of both the International City County Management Association and just completed my 10-year service award in that organization. Member of the Government Finance Officers Association, and have been a distinguished budget presentation reviewer for that organization for the last 12 years. Before I go any further, I wanted to give you this. This is my professional portfolio. It's a copy for the board to have. I know that you have access to my LinkedIn account, which has an electronic access to sort of work products and budgets and capital improvements and communication summaries, but sometimes it helps to have it in the flesh and paper. That is yours to keep. If there's anything you can glean from it, if I'm not fortunate enough to be your next manager, by all means, take, borrow, and steal. Good governance anywhere is good governance everywhere. So I have effectively spent my 17 years, about 6 years in each city or town that I've worked for. I worked for 6 years for my hometown, the city of Lawrence, Kansas, 1 year in the manager's office and 5 years working for the Metropolitan Planning Office. About 6 years working for the town of Lexington, Massachusetts, the self-proclaimed birthplace of American liberty, where the battles of Lexington and Concord took place. And for about the last 6 years for the town of Natick, Massachusetts, the self-proclaimed home of champions and home of college football's Doug Flutie. So that, I think, is a brief synopsis of education and work experience.
Could you tell us what you know about Fairview and what attracted you to apply for the position?
What I know about Fairview is what I have gleaned through driving through it. It's what I've gleaned through your website. It's what I have gleaned through reading about it in media sources. What I know is this. I know that it was incorporated in 1959. I know it has a population of about 8,000, but expects to grow continually and significantly, and it already has grown continually and significantly. I know that the high school mascot is the Yellow Jackets, which is why I'm wearing yellow and black today. Very good. And I know that it is filled with people who care about their community. This room is filled with them right now, both you, the elected officials, and the citizens that are sitting behind me. It's the middle of a Thursday afternoon, and you have a pretty significant turnout for a public meeting, and that's a very good sign. Each community that I've ever worked for has two things that go for it. It's got spirit, and it's got resources, and I can see very visibly that the city of Fairview has both. That intrigues me, and it makes me want to come here. I know that you have Bowie Park, one of the largest city-owned parks in the state of Tennessee. I know you've got one of the top 1,000 high schools in America here at Fairview High, pardon me. And I know that you've got tremendous opportunity. Opportunity can be very scary because you don't know what it's going to bring. But with that, you've got tremendous possibility to really live into your motto, which is progress and prosperity. That's what I know about the city of Fairview so far.
Excellent.
Can you tell us how this fits into your career and life plans?
I have my master's degree from the University of Kansas. And the one thing that we do with the University of Kansas is, in our public management degree, is city management. That's all we train for. And that has been my career path since about the age 22. In fact, earlier, actually, if you take a look at my resume. This is the next best logical step for me in my career path. I have taken on increasingly responsible actions and activities in each of my jobs, from being an intern to being a budget officer to being a deputy town administrator to then being the deputy town administrator and finance director in Natick, a town of 33,000 people and a budget of over $130 million. I'm intrigued to come to Fairview because of three main reasons. Number one, if you ask me who I am, I'm a community builder and I'm a community sustainer. And for the last 12 years, I've been doing a lot more community sustaining than I have actual building. And I would love to get back to actually being a part of building a community and doing subdivisions and working on comprehensive plans and continuing where I picked up as a transportation planner in my hometown of doing major thoroughfare plans and assisting those who are here to actually build a community that you're proud of 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now. The second is, from what I've seen of your community, you have needs. You have a need for someone to come in and bring stability to your organization. You've had a fair degree of turnover, and you're going to continue to have turnover in some of your staff positions. I have read your audits, and I have seen that there are some material weaknesses and significant deficiencies over the last several years in areas of internal controls and in budgets. Those are my bread and butter. As you'll see through my work product, I've won the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award from the GFOA 6 times in the last 12 years. I believe that it is the fundamental responsibility of someone in my position to give you all the information you need to make informed decisions for your community. I also believe it's my responsibility that you have information that is boiled down that we can share with everyone. Every taxpayer has a right to know where their money comes from and how their money's being spent. What I pride myself on is I can make a spreadsheet sing. I can make it so that anybody can understand it. And I've taken 600-page budgets and boiled them down to a budget summary of 2 pages. That's something that I would like to do here in Fairview so that people can simply see this is the money coming in and this is the money going out. I also, as finance director, have worked to clean up financial operations. 4 years ago in the town of Natick, we had 9 material weaknesses in our audit. This last audit, we had 0. So I understand what it takes to be able to come in, work with any existing staff, and be able to make sure that we can have stable finances which are open to all at all times moving forward. That, more than anything else, was the key to our success in Natick during the Great Recession. We regained the public's trust, we stabilized the finances, and it allowed for continual new growth and new development. And the third reason is that this is my calling. I am the son of an American historian, and I firmly believe that the American democracy is the greatest experiment in the history of humanity. And none of us know if it's actually going to work or not. But that all of us who are here in this room right now are participants. You who are elected, the citizens at large that are listening and vote at the ballot box and come and give testimony, and me who is appointed to do your bidding to make a difference. It excites me. It is my passion. This is my job. And I really believe that there's a very good opportunity here to build and to sustain Fairview into the community that we all want it to be. Does that answer your question, sir?
Generally, I have a little follow-up for you, though. You talked about, and you told us a story at lunch about your name and how you came about your name.
Sure.
So what kind of commitment are we looking for here? I mean, you're in Nashville because this is where your wife is going to school.
Yep.
Not because you chose Nashville as your career. Mm-hmm. So what happens in 2 years if she wants to go to California? Because we're kind of looking for somebody for more than 2 years.
I understand. For those that don't know in the audience, I am here in Tennessee because of my wife. My wife got accepted into a PhD program at Vanderbilt, which is a 6-year commitment. So whether you want me or not, I'm here for at least 6 years in the state of Tennessee. That has been the average length of time that I have served in all of my communities. And I've had opportunities in the past to leave and go elsewhere. I have felt in every place that I've gone, though, that to leave after 2 or 3 years just doesn't do justice to the communities that I've served. 2 years into my tenure in the town of Lexington, the longtime manager was, how shall we put it, given permission to leave by the city commission after 17 years. And it would have been a lot easier to go somewhere else. But a group of us said that it was our responsibility to make sure that the town of Lexington and a town of Lexington's stature and importance, quite honestly, in this country, would not have its government fall or falter. So we stayed, and it was a tougher decision. Those were difficult years, but we made a difference, and the community shows it now. If you hire me, I would hope that you would reappoint me, because it would be my plan to be here through the duration that Lane is at Vanderbilt and beyond.
Okay, thank you. That does answer my question.
Okay.
Contract.
How do you feel about contracts for a city manager?
In general,
The last 2 that we've had, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 hasn't had a contract.
it would be my preference to have a contract. I believe that it is better for the city manager and better for the city commission and the citizens if you have something which spells out exact employment terms between the two parties. So therefore, there's no confusion, there's no disagreement, this is what you agree to, and thus the citizens at large can see that as well. That's,
I believe there's places for contracts myself.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sir.
One of the questions I've been asking, you've done your research, obviously, and Bowie Nature Park is kind of our pride and joy. And there's a lot of conversation that goes on about the park. You know, people want to, add stuff, take away stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I want to know your opinion about our park from what you've researched and what your vision for the park would be.
I would say that, anytime you have a dedicated natural resource like Bowie Nature Park, you really have to go through a community process to determine what the overall feeling and goals for that resource is. I will freely admit that I don't know enough about the park to make that determination here today. And I would need to come in and listen first to see what those options are and to see what we could do with it. The overall feeling I've gotten from conversations I've had and observations I've seen online is that the park is a marketable resource, and you don't want to change too much of it. That being said, it's a large part of your community, land size. I mean, it's a large part of your community. As you go into the future, maintenance of that park, how much it costs, how much resources do you want to dedicate to it, and what are the benefits you can gain by expanding certain amenities for it, i.e., can you develop amenities at the park which could make it more self-sustaining, are things that you're going to have to look at. All this is leading to an answer which says if you don't have a master plan for the park, you probably need one. And I'd be more than happy to help try to achieve that if I was lucky enough to be your next city manager.
And do you want me to just go ahead and ask my three and get it over? Because we make sure that we get everybody's questions. The other one is, how would you describe your management style?
I firmly believe in the concept of servant leadership. And what that means is that I believe that I really have 3 sets of people that are my bosses. First and foremost, it's the 5 of you. You hire me, you can fire me, you can give me marching orders, you can set goals that I'm supposed to go follow. So at the end of the day, if you're not happy, I'm not here. That, in a nutshell, is the council manager form of government. And it's worked incredibly well in this country for the 120-plus years that it's been in action in various cities and towns. And I'm a firm believer and supporter in it. But if all I ever do and think about as I'm trying to execute your desires and your goals is just the 5 of you, then I'm completely missing the boat. Because I have staff, which I am answerable to. If they are happy, and they are motivated, and they have the tools and the organizational development, and they feel fairly treated, then we can achieve pretty much anything in this community that we want to, because the employees are the ones that get stuff done, not just me. And the third are the citizens at large. I would have 8,000 and growing members that I have to keep in mind with every single decision and every single possible service that we implement and that we choose to give. So I historically have kept all 3 groups in mind when making decisions, when making budget recommendations, when looking at departmental consolidations or policy initiatives that I've drafted or led in my communities. And in doing so, you tend to see things from every angle. The other part about being a servant leadership is you need to be visible in your community. As we talked about at lunchtime, New England is a peculiar place and has peculiar forms of government. And one of them, as we talked about, was town meeting and a representative town meeting. For the last 6 years, I was the one to actually run the projector and to take notes and to make amendments on the fly. And everyone in that chamber saw me, saw the suit coat off, saw the sleeves rolled up, and saw me putting things together. And it was very important for me to do that because it saw that even the deputy town administrator was willing to roll up his sleeves and do work in front of everyone when it counted. That was a visual point that staff saw. It was a visual point that citizens at home saw. It was a visual point that all the town meeting members saw. So I believe that I truly do serve all 3 groups of people. And it would be my hope and my expectation that that's exactly how you would see me, is practicing servant leadership here in Fairview.
The other question is, do you have any experience?
Can I ask a follow-up before
Sure,
you
no,
before you
yeah,
move on?
I was just trying to get my.
I don't want to break your rhythm down there, but,
No.
so could you describe for us how that looks in a more practical way in terms of the relationship with the board and what you think an ideal relationship looks like with the 5 of us?
An ideal relationship between a manager and a council is one where each and every single one of you feels completely comfortable to come to me at any time, but is one where both sides understand that it takes a majority of the council to actually implement a policy decision. I serve, it's the peculiar nature of my job. I serve the 5 of you. I will be willing and able to respond to any request and get anything done that you need me to do. But together, you represent the community. And we work best if there are times where there's a majority that can give me my marching orders. When I come in here, if I'm lucky enough to do so, one of my first goals would be to sit down with each and every single one of you and listen to what your goals for the city of Fairview are. And then collectively, hopefully to schedule a special meeting or part of one of the special working sessions to begin goal setting for the city of Fairview. And to collectively say, what do you want to achieve in the next 12 months or 6 months? Because I can't honestly build a budget properly if I don't know what you want to achieve financially in that period of time. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Back to you, Patty. Thank you.
I just thought, well, for us to be consistent, we get busy talking and make sure we're asking the same questions. So One of the things that I would like to know is what kind of grant experience could you bring to the city of Fairview? Any grants you've had any success helping write or any experience?
I've done a variety of grant work over my 17 years. More recently, it's been working with FEMA disaster recovery grants in the aftermath of the major storms that we've had in Massachusetts. We've all had major storms in our seemingly crazy weather patterns that we now live in. In the last 3 years, I have served in responses to Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Irene, and a nor'easter that dumped 2 feet of snow in 24 hours in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And was actively a part of my emergency operations center in Natick and in the response to that and leading public communication efforts to our citizens. During that, however, we had people, and I was one of them, that was actively taking account for every single expense, because everything you do during one of those emergencies is a reimbursable potential expense. I would say that between those 3 storms, we were able to get back $500,000 due to overtime charges and costs and, you know, roads that needed repairing and salt that needed restocking and things like that. Previously to that sort of experience, a variety of state grants from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, elder affairs grants for senior citizens, planning grants to try to further develop affordable housing in Natick. And then going back to Kansas and to the Metropolitan Planning Organization, I was the transportation planner. So I coordinated with the Kansas Department of Transportation and the Federal Highway Administration on a variety of grants and proposals for transportation enhancement. I understand the process of getting things onto the Transportation Improvement Program and onto the Unified Planning Work Program at the state level. I was successful in getting some of those transportation grants. In every year in the city of Lawrence, size of about 80,000 people, we probably sent in about 15 grant applications. They would fund 2 to 3, and that was pretty normal because you try to send in as many as you can, and they would, you know, certainly prioritize and see where the common goals were. And we would really, really want an intersection, and they would say, but we really, really need to improve this interchange. And we'd go, money you can give us is money that we don't have to spend ourselves. Thank you very much. So in the past, I've done that. And then I'd say the biggest single project where we got grant money for was I was part of a team that developed the first public transportation system in the city of Lawrence. So I worked very closely with our congressman at the time to secure additional funding for all of the bus stops and to get money for the initial buses, as well as slicing off our piece, shall we say, of public transit funding within the state of Kansas to start the T in the city of Lawrence.
Follow up on that.
Yes, ma'am.
What did you do for that additional funding? It's a discussion on the table right now in our legislation.
Well, which additional funding, I guess, would be the question.
Where did you find new revenue source not coming out of the general funds?
It's been a while. Let me think back to 1998, 1999. The City Commission in Lawrence actually approved a slight increase in local sales taxes to fund the the initial investment in public transit, the initial operating investment in public transit. Anybody who knows public transit in this country knows that it's never going to be self-sustaining. If you accept that, and you accept that it is a common good, or the argument that it is a common good, which I do, then it's folded into everything else that you pay taxes for. Fire departments are not self-sustaining, police departments are not self-sustaining. Hopefully city managers are slightly more self-sustaining, but you know. You pay taxes for a reason. You're supposed to get something. You're supposed to get services for those taxes. So it's a combination, it's a coupling of some degree of tax revenue, some degree of fair revenue, and then some degree of hopefully state and federal grants. And the federal government subsidizes a lot of public transit in this country.
Let's talk a minute about your communication style.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and take you back to, you gave a good answer about the working for the 5 of us and majority, but each of us can contact you individually. How are you going to deal, or have you had any experience dealing with one of us that oversteps that line and tries to, say, Michael, I really want this done yesterday, and we're not meeting until 3 weeks from now. How do you see you communicating your position to that individual person? Or have you had a story you can tell us about that?
A couple. So in my tenure in Massachusetts, I had a commissioner who the same individual that forced out the manager, had a very demonstrative leadership style, and she was chairman of the Board of Selectmen. Not the mayor, the position of the mayor, but the mayor here has different responsibilities than the board in Lexington. That individual, the best way for me to deal with that individual was to work both with her and calmly explain what we were doing and how we were doing it. And if there was a way to get it done, if there was a way to get it done that didn't require a majority, and it was a task, it was, this tree needs to be removed, or this pothole needs to be fixed, and it was something that staff could accommodate. Generally, that's what we do. The short answer is, if it's something we can do, generally we're going to find a way to get it done. Because you're right, you shouldn't have to wait 3 weeks to go fix a pothole. If it's something more significant, we may have to have a conversation and discuss the reasons why and how to wait. Generally, city managers and town administrators work through the mayor or the chairman of the board if there is an issue with a particular commissioner. And if there's a problem with a communication or a communication style. I will be honest with you that I've not had that problem with my communication style in being able to get something done with any of the people that I've worked for. I've worked for very conservative individuals and very liberal individuals, very tight-lipped individuals, and very demonstrative individuals. And I've always been able to successfully bridge a middle ground and find a way to come to a common understanding.
How familiar are you with our charter process here?
I would say decently.
You should be working under.
I've certainly read through it from front to back, and it's very similar to the charter of my hometown, which is a classic manager-commission form of government, just like it is here.
Okay. Part two, my question: what were the budgets the last two places you worked?
When I left, the town and Natick's budget, the one that was submitted on January 1 for the fiscal 15 year, was $131 million. And the budget for the town of Lexington when I left was a similar amount, but it went up on average about $5 million a year. So it's about $170 million now.
And you don't have a problem with the difference in salary being offered and what you're making now?
No. Certainly, you make more in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Cost more.
But if you've ever taken a look at the cost of living in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
I've been there, yeah.
There's a reason for that. So it's an understanding that when you come here, salaries are lower.
Cost of living.
But the cost of living is too.
Can you share an example where you have improved upon a process using automation in your past?
Mm-hmm. So one of my strongest suits, as I've tried to state and provided for you and give you testimony, is in budgeting. And what I have done, and what I would like to do here, is to really expand the how we do budgeting through a process of simply putting things into Excel workbooks for every department. A budget is a reflection of the values of any organization. And in the case of the City of Fairview, your budget is the reflection of the values of your community. How you get your money and where you spend your money reflects your values. If you believe that you should keep property taxes low and keep the burden on landowners low and charge higher sales taxes, you are expressing a value on where you want that money to come from. Conversely, if you want to make sure that you have quote-unquote adequate public safety and you want to spend more money on that, that expresses a value. You're going to make sure that your citizens have low response times. What I have done everywhere I've gone is to take each department and build a workbook. Make sure that those department heads put down the mission, the goals, a staffing history, an organizational chart, a staffing sheet showing each person how much they make, the line items for each department, and then the line item detail. So that everyone knows, and especially you who vote a budget, know exactly what the fire department does, know exactly what the finance department does. And everywhere I've gone, this has dramatically improved budget time, and it's dramatically improved the citizens' ability to see where and who gets what valued things in their community. So that's the thing that I've spent a significant amount of time on and automated. I've been a part of other automation processes for financial accounting systems, you know, adding on modules. I've redefined charts of accounts so that, you know, there's a better understanding to comply more with unified accounting methods. I've also done customer service automations where we have sort of customer service intakes. What we found in the last 12 years, though, is that a lot of the using automation is far easier than it used to be because there's a lot of canned programs now that you don't have to develop in-house. If you've got the talent to develop it in-house, that's great. Most cities and towns don't, and it ends up being just a lot easier to spend a little bit of money to add a module in to get that end result.
Because you have done research, my curiosity is, after looking at our budget, where would you say some of our key values are?
I would say that the city of Fairview values public safety. I would say that the city of Fairview values it's interesting. I want to say it values administration because those are the three largest parts of your budget. You're not spending a lot of money on public works, and you're not spending a lot of money on parks and recreation. And I understand there's county parks and rec. But if the sense of what I feel is that you want to grow, and you want to be able to maintain roads and byways, and that you want to take care of Bowie Park, it would seem like more money should be being spent in those areas. Now, that's really dependent upon a goal-setting process and a budget process to really kind of get at and to see what it would take to do that. One of the things that I have done and that I would love to do here is that if there's ever a proposal to increase taxes or to increase revenues, that is properly costed out so you can see exactly what you would get from that. Or the flip side of that is, if you think you need to add X, what is it really going to take for us to get that? And then you as commissioners can weigh whether or not it's worth it. Sometimes it's worth raising taxes. Sometimes it's not worth raising taxes because you can end up achieving the same end or goal in a different manner.
How many folks did you have in working for you in your most recent job as deputy administrator?
Now, overall, the city, the town of Natick had over 1,000 full-time equivalent employees. That was principally because the town schools, we had town schools. So we don't have county schools, so there was a conversation in the conference room when the last candidate was here. We really don't have counties to speak of in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Personally, I was finance director, so I had 19 direct reports. And I went through the process of consolidating 4 separate departments into one unified finance department. So I'm very used to and accustomed working in a, within a larger structure, certainly working within that smaller structure and understanding customer service issues and understanding personnel issues and working through personnel concerns and doing personnel reviews. And so I'm very used to and comfortable with smaller organizations. I also am used to that from the service I've done in my parish. As I said, I'm a loyal Episcopalian. I served as both the junior and senior warden and then assistant treasurer and treasurer for St. James's Episcopal Church for about 9 years. So I was a principal lay leader for about a church of 9 staff members. Again, so it's working through, and that, of course, is even more sort of, you know, I want to say emotional, but it's more, you know, connected because you're a parishioner and, you know, you're pledging certain amounts of money, and the conversations you have to have there can sometimes be even more more difficult, shall we say, than what you have in a work environment.
If Commissioner Carroll will let me, I'd like to steal one of her questions here. And along those lines, we've heard several of the candidates talk about a much improved planning process and generation of plans and stuff like that. This is going to be a big step down in terms of the number of people, the resources, the budget level, the access to information. It's very much not so much that the board wouldn't entertain those things or like to do those things. Some of it's not available. Some of it's not cost effective to us. So you're not going to have a lot of staff that has time to sit around. You've got a budget guy, and our finance director does your budget, and you've got, you know, a street supervisor who has 4 or 5 people that pick up leaves and does everything that happens, and they're probably gearing up for the bad weather tonight. But we don't have a lot of staff people that are available to do what I would term necessary but administrative work.
Sure.
Everybody here tends to work.
Yep.
So elaborate on that a little bit. How do you take what sounds like some very good ideas to me and put that into that world? Because that's a reality that we deal with daily here.
Yep. Well, the reality is that virtually all of that work product you see in front of you is mine. And I was the one that did it. When I was finance director, we didn't have anyone to issue bills for, we did a pay-as-you-throw trash program because we collected the trash, but you had to buy the trash bags. And there was a fee for each bag in Natick. I did those bills. I did bills for police details. In Massachusetts, you can effectively hire a police detail for a 4-hour minimum to come out, and I was the one responsible for issuing those because I didn't have anybody else. Those are inherited tasks I had. The old finance director did it too. I had no analysts. I had nobody to do those budget worksheets. I had nobody to do the financial indicators. So I did all that, and I'm very used to and very comfortable with the fact that there's nobody else on that bench. I have found that you can do amazing things with the resources you have if you can understand the resources that you do have. And everywhere I've gone, I think I've done a very good job of understanding what those resources are and not expecting too much, but challenging the people I have to do what is necessary to get jobs done. Does that answer your question, sir?
Well, it does, except it creates another one for me here.
Here all day.
So it's good to hear that you have the hands-on experience.
Yes, sir.
But I can tell you from several years of observation of a series of city managers, we've had 3 during my service, that the city manager's job doesn't leave a lot of time to be engrossed in long-term budget preparation type situations between the crisis of the day, between the number of appearances either at commissions or public appearances or other demands on your time. If you read our charter, you're well aware that you are the chief personnel officer, and so there are always personnel issues, people wanting to get promoted, jobs to be filled, that sort of thing. How are you going to take these skills that you have demonstrated to us, shared with us that you have, And how are you going to get those to the people that will allow you to be available to do your job? Because we're really looking for someone that has those skills, but knows better how to translate them than to actually perform them themselves.
I'm a firm believer in learning by doing, and I believe that that works for teaching as well. I have a skill set that I believe can demonstrate how you can automate certain processes and procedures. The budget's one example. But any manager who comes in has to know and has to learn what his people under him do. I believe and have confidence in my abilities that I can come in and see what is going on, learn how other people are doing that work, and if there's a way to improve upon them, do that, and see if there's ways that we can't expand what individuals are doing now or find better and easier ways to do them. So that's one. The second is this is an all-encompassing job. You hire me, and I work for the city of Fairview 24 hours and 7 days a week. That may not be fair for a family life, but it's what every manager in this country knows. The reality is there's not a lot of downtime. There's not a lot of off time. So I believe that what I've done over the last 17 years, and certainly my last job, I worked effectively 2 jobs for the last 20 months. Didn't get burned out, and was able to actually find ways to improve upon what 2 people had been doing. Now, that being said, when I left, they replaced me with 2 people. So maybe that's true and maybe that's not true. Or maybe it's a testament to the capabilities that I have. I can't really speak to that. You can check the references and ask for yourself.
Thank you.
Sir.
What experience, did we do planning and zoning?
No.
What experience do you have with planning and zoning in your past, Michael?
As I said, for 5 years I was employee of the Lawrence Douglas County Metropolitan Planning Organization. I've fulfilled a variety of functions there, always with the title intern after them, strangely enough, but it was basically in every aspect of planning and zoning in the city of Lawrence. So basic land use, commercial, historic preservation, and a large degree of experience in transportation planning. So like I said, I have prepared major thoroughfare plans in the past. I've been a community's bicycle coordinator in the past, which is interesting considering I actually don't know how to ride a bicycle. They didn't find that out until I was done. But the bike lanes work. I am a former member, like I said, of the American Institute of Certified Planners. So I understand all the basic fundamentals of planning and zoning. I have done comprehensive planning in the past. I have helped work on the comprehensive plan for the town of Lexington. And didn't do as much in the last 6 years in Natick, simply because we had a dedicated community development office, and they were sort of in the midst of sort of redefining that plan before I got there, so there wasn't a lot of hands-on work to really do then. Most recently in Natick, we're in the process of redefining our zoning bylaws, which by one commentator that was hired to redo them said that they were the worst in America. So anything that actually has proper pagination would be an improvement compared to what I've been working with from a zoning standpoint. Not exactly the model that the AICP would point out or put forward. But I have experience with planning and zoning, both in Kansas and in Massachusetts. And like I said, that I am interested in getting back into the realm of actually building and, you know, first generation planning and zoning development. I have a lot of experience with overlay districts because that's what you tend to have in more urban communities and developed communities of the Northeast. The available of, shall we say, virgin land ended in towns like Lexington and Natick before the beginning of World War II. So all generation, all development is redevelopment in those areas, which makes you think in a different way. It's easier to do what the city of Fairview has to do now and has the opportunity to do now, which is to effectively still have a blank farmland or topographic slate and to develop the type of community you want.
What experience or in the past or strategies with the subject of lack of public trust in the government can you share with us?
One of my proudest accomplishments is restoring the public trust in the town of Natick, Massachusetts. When I was hired and started in March of 2008, the town had experienced, I'd say, about 8 to 10 years of decay regarding the trust in its public offices. The town switched to a town administrator charter form of government in 1980, and there was a longtime town administrator who died in office in 2002. There was a period of time where there was no administrator, and there was a vacuum created, and there was an advisory committee called the Finance Committee, which took a lot of the sort of vacuum, filled that vacuum. There was a lot of consternation, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety over who was really getting stuff done, who would be there to shepherd the ship, if you will. Another administrator was hired, and that was temporarily righted, but the personality style just did not work. A very good man, very accomplished man, but tended to have the bedside manner of General George Patton. Did not work terribly well with council, or with town meeting, for that matter. My boss got there, and she was the first female administrator in the history of the town, and had a personality style that no one had ever quite worked with before in the town of Natick. And when I got there, it was very clear that after a decade of sort of not trusting administration, her and I within the first week realized that that had to be job number one, and that had to be our first goal. And the method with which we did that was the stabilization of the town finances. I have become a fervent believer that if you can have open and transparent finances, and that if it is maintained, you can achieve pretty much anything you want to in your community. Because the anxiety that is generated from having financial instability can be devastating to community building. And it can be devastating to the whole concept of public trust. But if you have it, that trust is very visible and it's very obvious. And people, we saw it. In the middle of the Great Recession, the anxiety level in that community went like this. So much so that 2 years into the recession, they approved $100 million in bonds to build a new high school and a new community senior center.
Glad you hit on that, because my question of, can you share a capital project that you were personally involved with? And we are short on time, so I'm going to ask you to give us the
Fair
best
enough.
answer you can on the best project.
The best project is the new Natick High School. It is a $80 million facility. It is state-of-the-art. It allows for, it's a LEED certified silver building. It has solar panels. It has recycled water. It has a data center so that the 8 schools, the Natick Public Schools, can have everything centralized there with multiple redundant backups. It fosters one-to-one computing. So all students in the Natick Public Schools, 8 through 12, have laptops which are issued by the district. And it can accommodate 1,600 children running those laptops all at the same time. It has wonderful gymnastics facilities and state-of-the-art theaters and classrooms. There are 2 amphitheaters built into the school where you can do more college-style classes. And it is a showpiece for the community.
Excellent.
Mayor, just that one last question of mine that I've been asking. Tell us how you would handle conflict with Board of Commissioners, the citizens, or employees.
Michael, before you answer, Michael's time started later.
Oh, okay, no wonder
It
it
is about
seemed.
7 more minutes.
Okay.
Excellent, then I'll keep watching for you.
I'm like, how did we not get this in?
Go ahead. Okay. Thank you.
Conflict resolution is something which you The key to conflict resolution is having trusting dialogues. People are angry because they feel misunderstood. And therefore, the first and foremost important thing for any manager, public official, counselor, therapist, teacher, parent, grandparent to do is to be able to listen. And that is something I think I do very well. I believe firmly that you have to be an active listener. I have always had an open door policy everywhere I've gone and everywhere I've managed and everywhere I've worked. And it is a challenge to one's time management. But that's what I'm here for. I'm the city manager. And it's dependent upon me. You hire me to do the day-to-day affairs and to find a way to get the day-to-day affairs done. Most of the time, that's through the 69 full-time staff members that I'm going to have under me, because they're the ones that are going to be fixing the potholes and collecting the leaves and responding to the public safety concerns. But you know what? If somebody comes and says, gosh darn it, I don't like this, or I was treated poorly, or this person offended me, it's my responsibility to be able to sit down and meet with them and listen. And if I can't do it right then, to find time to call them back and set a time and say, you are valued, you are important to me, we're going to sit down and do that. That works just the same for staff as well. And actually, it works the same for commissioners as well. You've got to make sure that you're valued.
Real quick 2-minute question for you. I'm asking, you can answer in 2 minutes.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure everybody up here gets the same thing that I do. Normally, if there's a citizen's complaint, we get it.
Yep.
They're going to call me and vent that the city didn't do something, or why didn't they do this, or why was police car driving too fast, or why can't I get my leaves picked up, or what, and we did that to you. But how important would you say it is when we call you and tell you this? I mean, where would you put that on your agenda as far as getting it done and getting a response back to those citizens?
High.
How high?
Pretty darn high.
Okay, right answer.
Right. No, it
is.
It is. I mean, it's not to say that it's a no-brainer, but it's a no-brainer. I work for you. If you are the representatives of the people, if we're not representative, if I'm not responsive, we have a problem. So some things may not be able to be taken care of in 15 minutes. But if you can get a hold of me and I can say I'm on it, and then I go and ask what's going on, because the likelihood there, very few times will it be in one of those examples that I'm going to have the answer for you right away, because I'm not the one doing the traffic stop and I'm not the one picking up the leaves. I'm going to have to go ask. But if you know I'm on it, you can call them back. Or if you prefer, and councils and managers have this in different ways and feel differently. Sometimes you want to be the one to respond. Sometimes you want me to be the one to respond. And I would work that out with each and every single one of you, how you prefer to do it. But at the end of the day, the citizen needs to know that their government listens to them and that their government is responsive. And collectively, the 70 employees and the 5 of you represent the government of the city of Fairview.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna, unless anyone has a burning ending question. All right, why should we hire you, Michael, as our next city manager of Fairview?
I believe I'm your best candidate. I believe I'm your best candidate for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think I'm uniquely situated with a series of skills that meet your current and future needs. It's very clear to me as an outside observer that you do have fiscal management responsibilities and needs you need to be met, and that is one of my stronger suits. You need someone to be able to come in and be a professional manager and organizer who's used to rolling up his sleeves, who's used to working with departments that are smaller, and guide them and motivate them to do the best job they can. And I've done that. You need someone with experience in planning and zoning and longer-term thinking regarding both strategic planning, transportation planning, and land use planning. And I've done that. And as much as anything else, You have a candidate who is young, who is motivated, and who really, really likes the prospect of being your next city manager. I really like the possibility of coming here and building a community and making this the best small town in Tennessee. That's what I want to be able to come here and do, and I look forward to the opportunity to do it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you for your time and your attention. You as you come on in.
Alan Purcell, nice to meet you, Mr. Hall.
Okay, if we can have the attention of the crowd. Thank you all again for participating and being cooperative. We have our candidate, Mr. Wayne Hall. And as you see, we're kind of referencing, we have a series of several questions. It seems to be others, you know, some are gravitating. Let's make just make sure all the mics are on. Got that?
Who? I didn't know if Brandon needed to be in here or not. She taking notes. She has been in, so I didn't know.
So just finishing the sentence, we have questions and we're all trying to get through the questions and be able to be consistent in our inquiries. Okay? And we're going to start with the first question as we've asked all candidates. Provide a brief summary of your education and governmental work experience, please.
Okay, high school only. When I grew up, my family couldn't afford college, so being the son of an Army sergeant, that was the reason we couldn't. So basically, that's my education, other than some few some computer classes and some Dale Carnegie speaking course, which, if you know my nervousness, it's not paying off the best right now. But
Mr. Hall, we're going to have to ask you to pull it a little closer to you and speak up.
Thank you, sir.
Either
right.
that or Eva's making signs at me, one or the other.
Yeah, that's the here sign.
Okay. And then, of course, I think everybody knows that I've been involved with the Planning Commission for a number of years here in Fairview, as well as a commissioner here, and so a lot of various other boards, Tree Board, the Board of Zoning Appeals, Board of Adjustments and Appeals. So I've had pretty good background of work with the city as far as the boards are concerned.
Can I throw an add-on question to that? How long, you've been, how long would you say you've served the city in some way on a board or as a planning commission?
I think I went on the Planning Commission about 1994.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Hall, can you tell us how this factors into your career and life goals, and basically why do you want to be, the city manager?
Well, of course, I think the main goal that I have is I love the city of Fairview. I want to see it prosper. And I think during the time that I've served as Fairview and the various boards and everything, that we've prospered real well. And, we've made a lot of headway, and I think we can make further headway through the future.
Can you describe for us your example, your perfect communications with the commission? How is it supposed to work? How is it supposed to run? That sort of thing.
As a city manager, the responsibility is to be here at every meeting, but also be responsible for the agenda getting out properly and in a proper time span that we need to have it there. And, like I said, be here at every meeting. And as through the time that I've been interim, I've attended a lot of other meetings. I think possibly 98% of every meeting in the city so far, from the Tree Board, the Park Board, Planning Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, as well as the City Commission meetings.
To elaborate on that just a little bit, how do you expect us to act towards you? And what should we expect to see in the way that you will treat us?
Well, I think courtesy with all of us is the main thing, and I respect each and every one of you, and I know that y'all respect me. And, you know, I think mutual respect is a big thing toward that.
Okay.
Well, let's just start with my questions. Okay, obviously, you're gonna know a lot about our park, not only personally, just by visiting, and living here, but one of the questions, you know, is a big concern and always has been. I noticed even in your resume, you talked about, the land trust and how in your years of Board of Commissioner that you kind of helped, steer in that direction. Can you kind of give me some of the history then of the park and how you feel as your service as a commissioner, and what's your future vision of the park?
Well, I go back many years from Ms. Bowie's land. I go back to seeing where the city residents was not treating Ms. Bowie's land the way it should have been treated. It was used as a dump site. I'm sure if anybody who grew up here knew that there was sofas there was water heaters that was thrown out there, bags of trash. On Sundays when I'd come down to visit Dad and Mother, we always usually had Sunday dinner here, and he would like to go fishing. This was in his later years when he wasn't able to, you know, go too far out. But anyway, we would always come over to Lake Van and fish. And he expressed then one day we need to get this cleaned up. And that goes back many, many years in my early married life. And he, I think, along with John Stark and several other people, were instrumental in getting Ms. Bowie to, or Dr. Bowie, to donate it to Fairview for a park. And through the years, it got cleaned up, and it's the apple of our eye right now. And it's always been a protection to me that it was a thing that I could go and enjoy my dad's company after he passed away. So when the opportunity kept presenting itself, Ms. Eva always challenged me to one day hopefully be able to get a conservation easement. So when the process come along for the public's property or the Bowie Commons property, I kept asking these questions: engineer's report, legal opinion, a conservation, what would it take to have a conservation easement? Then I asked one night to put on the agenda what would be the impact of a commercial area in this around the park. All of these things led to getting our conservation easement on our park. And I happen to be one of the 5 people that voted for it, and I feel very fortunate to have been there to have done that.
Sorry to can I tag on a question on that one too? You know, there's been some conversation about whether or not sitting as a Board of Commissioner is really experience for your position as city manager. Mm-hmm. Do you feel now that you've done the job for a little while that your years of Board of Commissioner and planning has helped you at all do a good job at what you're doing?
I really believe so, because now that I've sat up there and been in this position in there, I feel that I'm more connected with our employees. I feel that I'm more connected with our citizens, and I feel that I can do the job that's needed to carry the city forward in the future. And I think the experience there has helped a great deal.
I mean, what's your experience in dealing with economic development?
Of course, being on the Planning Commission has led to a lot of that. As I've stated in the past, I've been a big part from Flying J's approval all the way to Walmart's approval. You take it in between. I've been involved in a big part of everything that's gone on in this town for a number of years, from the residential subdivision approval to our commercial approval. The Food Line and McDonald's was one of our firsts. I did not sit on any board when they were approved, but I did have quite a bit of influence on the developer to get Food Line and McDonald's looking at us. He was a close friend that I had dealt with for over 25 years. He left the partnership that he was in as a contractor that I'd done an awful lot of work with. He wanted to go into development. And I would call him every 3 months. Cason, what's happening? Anything happening? Has Food Line made any commitment? So after I bugged him for about a year, he finally said, I've got something that I've got in mind that I'm planning on doing. He was actually out at Tidewater's every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, personally counting the cars. Reported back to Food Line, and that's what got them interested, was his diligent work that he'd done at that particular point in time. So, like I said, I didn't have anything on the approval process, but I did have some energy in getting behind him to look at us for a project. And so, if you look back on those days, that was a big plus for us because it meant a lot to us as far as revenue source. Those two were our anchors for a long time. So it's got to have been a lot to help keep taxes down, as well as a McDonald's that kind of was unheard of in a town of our size at that particular point in time.
If I can ask you another question, how would you motivate your senior staff and address staff performance and improvements and opportunities? Because we all know that that's one of the toughest things for a city manager is the number of people that are under you and trying to keep positive mental attitudes among them so you can get the utmost performance out of them.
Well, that's the one great thing that I've enjoyed about these last few months. I have had great relationship with every employee that I've come across. I think I brought a major harmony amongst everybody. Anything that I've suggested, we find a way to get it done and without any problem, whether it be from the financial end of it to the boys out on the road taking care of our street salting in bad weather, our leaf vacuuming, the Parks Department taking care of everything, the trails and everything that they do. The Police Department, of course, we know what they do every day. The Fire Department has a major, and our Codes Department is doing a great job under the circumstances. They have fell in and pitched in, and together we have survived at this point in time. I think that's one of the needs in the future that whoever gets in this position has got to address pretty quick is a planner. And I think that's one of the first things that we need to address.
The other candidates that we've talked to at this point basically had a skill that they wanted to be sure and get their commercial message to us about what that skill was.
Right.
What's your skill, Mr. Hall? What do you think that you do best at all?
I think the best thing that I do is getting along with our employees and getting along with our citizens. I think that's our major goal. You know, if the employees are happy, then we're going to do a good service for our citizens. I mean, that's as pure and simple as you can get it. It's, I don't know any other way to address it other than that.
Can you give us a experience that you had? I know you were a long-term businessman. Can you give us an example of an experience where you had a situation where you were able to turn a performance around, and it doesn't matter to me whether it was a manager or employee or anybody, just I'd like to know how you handled it and how you made a practical application of those skills.
A gentleman that I bought the company from many years ago was like a second dad to me. And he was kind of grooming me to run the business, which I found out later that I wasn't expecting it right off the bat. But anyway, he was grooming me, and I would ride with him daily. And, you know, when a small job would come along that I could handle by myself, I would take the initiative to go and handle it, you know, myself. And one day he said, "Wayne, those things are nice. The check's nice that you bring in that's being done." He said, "But it's not what you do yourself. It's what you get done, what you designate to get done." So that's been my lifelong goal, is to follow his guideline.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and ask the few questions that I've been asking. What's your management style?
First, if there's a problem, is to sit back and reflect on it, and be very cautious before I make the wrong decision or the right decision. But most of the time, when you do that, you're going to make the right decision.
And how do you handle conflict?
That's a hard one, because conflict is kind of a problem. The way that I would see handling a conflict is hear both sides and take time to reflect before the decision's made on the conflict, and try to come to a solution that will help all concerned. And but most of the time, you can handle a conflict. There's always room for improvement both sides.
Could you discuss your budget development process?
Not being trained for budget, other than, you know, my own personal budget as we had with the company. But here I'm relying on my CFO, which, by the way, just passed another budget class yesterday that he studied awful hard for. But I think overall on the budget, we've got to rely on the department heads and take their input, and then submit that to you as a commission, and make sure that we are spending the right money in the right place.
How would you, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
How would you interject your years, 12 years on the planning, on the Board of Commissioners?
8 years.
8 years.
Actually 7.5.
Seven,
Yeah.
7 3/4.
Yeah, something like that.
How would you interject your part in that? Because I know that the most intense meetings we have is during budget.
Yes, sir.
I know you did a lot of budget reviews when
Yes,
you did that.
Yes, sir.
Are you going to be capable of taking, you know, this is a wish list, this is what I really need, and this is what we got to work with?
Yeah.
So how do you feel like you'd be able to handle that part of it with the experience that you had as a board commissioner?
Yes, sir. I'm already hearing the wish list from the department heads and the people in various areas. So the only thing we can do there is put it down on paper. If it doesn't fit, then we take it out. If we don't have the money, we don't spend it. And that's one thing that I'm looking at now, that I've already run into a few things that I think we're spending money unwisely on. And if that's the case, then that's the way that I will work that. Right now, one thing that I've run into, that we're paying a website like 16 grand a year for online tax paying. And I see it on channel 19 every time I flip to it. We're not actually collecting that kind of money from that website. So that we're going to be looking into another area where we can save that money. And there could be cuts all the way across the board that I think that we can look into. And another thing, as far as budget goes, I think will help. We have monies that we can bill back to engineering grants for engineering fees. I mean, so right now, I think of located almost $40,000 that hasn't been billed back to grants at this point in time. So that's one thing that I'm looking into very heavy, and I'm relying on Will Owen, our city engineer, to direct us in that direction.
What is the single most satisfying capital project that you have been professionally responsible for, and why was it? What was the single most satisfying capital project that you were professionally responsible for?
You're speaking of a grant or resurfacing of like Cox Pike and Cumberland?
This is forever, your professional career?
Yeah.
Yeah, not just recent.
Okay. I would say my association with Vanderbilt for 25 years, having their contract on all their dormitories for years, until Vanderbilt got to where they couldn't pay my labor price that went up through the years. One of the other things that I really am proud of is the table that we refinished inside the Milky Way Farms that was originally bought by Opry Land for $75,000. They had to refund the check. They couldn't get it out of the building. It was built inside of this Milky Way mansion. Well, after they had a banquet there during the Christmas season, instead of using glass coasters, they used paper coasters. All this popped out on top of the table. We refinished it inside the house. And I took my men down there. It took us 3 days to do it inside that house. It was actually belonged to Mr. Mars that you and I discussed the other night with the people from Thompson Station. And, you know, when you can go in and do that kind of work and satisfy the people, that's very rewarding through the years. So.
How about as your career as a public servant? What's the most satisfying thing?
The conservation easement on Bowie Park.
Having served as interim for about 90 days, Mr. Hall, what would, if selected permanently for the job, what would be your top 3 priorities as the new city manager?
The first 3 needs to be the budget, planning director, and a new fire chief.
Could you share with us any, I haven't asked that one, so I'm not even gonna ask that one.
He's got another one.
Huh?
He's got another one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, can you take the fire chief
Yes, sir.
and elaborate a little bit, because the city manager is the chief personnel officer.
Yes, sir.
Could you elaborate a little bit on how you think we ought to go out and find a new fire chief?
Well, right now, I've already given Chief Cooper the approval to advertise for a new fire chief through MTAS. Then we'll advertise for it locally in the newspaper here, and we'll advertise for it probably in the Tennessean. And I think with MTAS getting their, you know, the word out there, that'll be the way we'll go with that.
Already got an application.
Do it.
When you saw it in the paper.
This is nothing really to do that. I know I've got some friends of mine that I've known for a long time. They just retired from Franklin, and now he's a fire chief in Laverne. So there are people that are local and that know the area. That he was assistant fire chief up there. So there's a lot of people. We have a large pool of people to choose from locally.
Getting back to the fire chief for one instance, I've actually sat on a couple of committees where firemen have been hired. And the last committee that I sat on, my first choice didn't get hired right then, but my second choice did. But my first choice did get hired as the very next one. So both of those boys have turned out to be great employees of the city. But I think that I possibly will have a committee on the fire chief. Actually, we do have the time. We have over 3 months to be able to go through that process.
What's your feeling on the fire chief having to live in the city?
I think he should. I believe that's a pertinent thing, that he needs to be here in the city. And one other thing that I have found out on the fire chief, our current fire chief is a fire inspector. Where that if we get a new one in, we may not have one that has the credentials yet to be that. So Chief Cooper and I have talked, and he's willing to stay on as a volunteer in the meantime in case we have to have him, come in for some inspections. Like the Walmart was a big thing there. So had we not had that, we would have probably had to went to the county or the state one to have had that took care of. We do have one of the firemen is in school for that, but he's about a year away from that class. It's about a 2-year class, to be certified.
How do you feel about working with the county administration department? I know some of the things you just mentioned, I know we've used the county several times.
Yes, sir.
But just for communication with the county?
Yes, sir. I believe that I have a good relationship with the county mayor, the sheriff, the county trustee. So I've had a good relationship with all them for sitting on the board several years. So I think we'll be in good shape as far as my experience with the county.
Could you share with us ways that you have improved your professional abilities over the last 2 years?
I would say meeting the public more every day, getting to know more of the people in this town, and the experience here that I've had with the employees has been a great experience. I mean, it's a life experience that you don't go through too often in your lifetime.
Well, I don't know if this is fair because, we know you, but I think a lot of we think we know you. Mm-hmm. Give us something that would explain a little bit more about your work ethic and value system as far as what kind of job you're going to do. Give us a little insight.
Well, first off, I'm here when the doors are open most every morning. If I'm out taking care of projects in the field, I'm right back here. I try to be here to close up. I think there's only been a day or two that I hadn't been here to close up. I've attended all the meetings. I think that the city manager is only required for y'all's Board of Commissioners meetings, but I think if the city manager is going to be a city manager, he needs to know what's going on with every board. And I don't know any other way to put it other than that's my work ethic, is to to try to stay on top of everything that is going on in the city. And by doing that, I think then that's the best return that I can give the citizens.
I've got 2 questions for you. How do you feel about delegation of authority?
I think if you put the right people in the right place and you feel comfortable with it, then you can delegate the right people in the right place. And of course, with the planning director and with the fire chief coming on, those are 2 key positions in this city that's needed right now. Right now, we've got a good police chief. We have a good park director that's handling the roads department. We actually have some other people coming along with some being certified in certain areas. And I think the more certification we get, and we just finished certification of Title VI compliance, certification for road inspections and this type thing, and we have to have those. Yes, sir, we have to have those for federal grants and state grants. So the more certification we get with our employees, the more we can get done for the city.
Second part is, how do you feel about contract for the city manager?
Don't require one. pure and simple.
Okay. That's a pretty pure and simple answer, thank you.
I don't know if Alan was going to ask this or not, but he asked it earlier in another, and I thought it was a good question, so I'm going to borrow. You know that in a lot of cases, there's a lot of pressure put on the city manager. You've seen it from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think you would respond to a commissioner wanting something done for them? What would be, Alan probably asked that better. Go ahead and ask.
We're all got the ideas that are hot to us at that moment. And the question was framed in that you work for all five of us.
Right.
And it takes a majority of us to actually enact anything.
Right.
But each one of us can apply pressure
Yes,
to you to do something.
Yes, sir.
How are you going to respond to that? And tell us how you're going to diffuse it or deal with us if one of us steps over the line and tries to over-influence.
I think that I have enough, once I look into the situation, I think I have enough reasonable ability to diffuse it in that term. I'm sure there's going to be political pressure down the road, but I try to look at it from a different perspective and look at it from what the citizens would expect of me. You know, so that's the way that I would approach everything.
So would you say you work more for the citizens or for the Board of Commissioners? We know you would have to
Right.
do both.
Well,
What would be
I
your-
think if I keep the citizens happy, then I'm keeping y'all happy. Because they're going to come to y'all for things that they don't like. So if it's within the power of the city manager to diffuse that situation, and I think that's an ability that I do have, and if it's something that the city can legitimately take care of, then I will see to it that it gets taken care of within the power of the city manager's office.
Can you share a best story or example where you have improved upon process using automation in your past?
I would say automation, as far as when the fax machines first came out. That was a big thing for businesses. And I won't mind telling you, a lot of this goes back to my work experience, but I actually had the contract with Saturn for a number of years by way of General Motors in Detroit that contacted me and wanted me to handle the restoring of the furniture that was being shipped in by their executives. And I've always made the statement that they bought my first fax machine. And the way that come down, and they said, if you fax the bill in Friday morning, we'll send the check out on Friday afternoon. So to me, that was enough right there to make me go out and buy a fax machine that day. So, I mean, that's part of business. You got to go with the flow, so to speak. So as far as automation, I would say that would be my first biggest incentive to take care of that type thing.
What is your experience with planning and zoning?
I'd say anywhere between 15, 17 years. And I would imagine that a lot of our regs today I was a part of, adapting them. And not to say that we're not in the process right now of revisiting those and bringing them up to date. We actually have two committees going right now, one on the subdivision regulations and another one on the zoning. And I am sitting in on all those meetings. And, you know, not I'm a member of one of the committees, but the other one I will be setting in on to see what direction we go in those, so.
Could you discuss any marketing background experience that would help Fairview move it forward in the future? Marketing
Well,
experience.
we are looking into right now a brochure that I am working with Middle Tennessee Industrial Association. They will actually do the printing of it free for us. And we have a member of the chamber, Ms. Joey Gallagher, who is going to bring some of our actual statistics of Fairview. The one we have right now has more of Williamson County in there. It doesn't have a whole lot about Fairview. I think that you know, our commercial areas such as the Publix, the Food Line, our small businesses as well as Walmart should be noted in there. But also there's nothing in there about Bowie Park on the one that we have now. And I think that should be maybe a 2-page deal donated to Bowie Park alone. And I think that's a starting point. I have actually been talking to a realtor regarding some of the industrial areas that we've addressed in the past, possibly improving the areas. One of those at the first of, as we come into Fairview on the eastern side of town, I think that needs to be dressed up, made look more presentable. And the other side of the interstate, we've got the infrastructure over there, and I think if we can ever get that where it looks a lot better, it'd be more attractive to people coming to look at Fairview. That's pretty well the areas that I've been trying to focus on.
Let me follow up on that. When you say dress that area up.
Yes, ma'am.
In this conversation, and I don't disagree in a
Right.
sense, but in the conversation of planning, zoning, eminent domain, beautification, codes, things of that nature, when you say dress that up, walk me through the process of what you mean by that.
I think, first off, I'd like to see it, and you and I have discussed it before, I'd like to see it back off of the road. And you actually mentioned that this morning, but that's always been my idea, and you and I have sat in some boards before, or some meetings before regarding that particular area. And, you know, if we could ever get that into town where TDOT would come along and improve our turning lanes and that type of thing up there, I think then that the businesses up there would fall in line to where we could dress up that with some landscaping and sort of, you know, make their places look a lot better. And, you know, it would be nice if they could just pick them up and move them back, but we can't do that. So as far as eminent domain, I personally, that would be a decision y'all would have to make. Y'all would have to direct me in that direction, you know, so.
In a general sense of that, I guess, what can the city actually do? What do we have control over?
That has been a political issue through the years. I've sat on the board when I've tried to get areas cleaned up, and I'm not trying to bring that out in a bad way, but I actually brought it as part of the agenda one night, and it got voted down. So it was pretty well telling me that not to go there. Now, several years have passed, so that may be something we need to look into as far as what it would take to beautify that end of town. And as far as the other side of the interstate, that does need addressing, because if you get off I-40, you know what we're faced with. You know, that's the first thing they see about Fairview. And, you know,
And that's a good answer, and the reason I brought that up, more for the public than anything, because when someone says, what about this area, why can't you do anything about it? I wanted to kind of have the dialogue that there is limitations on a city or a municipality when you're dealing with private or commercial property. So there's a huge process around that, and it has to do with planning and zoning.
Right.
You have a question?
Yeah, my follow-up on that right there is how willing are you to step up? And I know you've been associated with TDOT before, when I'm not knocking TDOT. Thank goodness we got 840 completed in no time at all, and
No debt.
and just as you said, no debt. That it was not done with federal funds; it was all state funds. So, but it was kind of a lengthy process. Going to TDOT and asking them, what I refer to as raising an area, to clean everything off. Besides, I mean, that's one of the first things people have to know we're here first, and it could be dramatically. It must give a much better impression to the city just with that cleaned off, and then moving forward with the next move that I think everybody in this town just about agrees with.
Yeah.
So, how comfortable would you be with going to TDOT?
I have been there before.
I know you have.
On our road out here in front of the building. We had some state representatives, State Senator Jack Johnson was there at those meetings. But I feel the first thing that we need to do is close this 2,500 feet up here between where Tractor Supply is and Park Village. That needs to be the first thing on the agenda.
To do what with?
To get it where we could have the sidewalks and the turning lane there. I mean, that needs to be widened out and close in our, our whole area there. I did have a good conversation. In order to open Walmart, I had to talk to TDOT in order to make sure that this was safe out here and this was a thing that we had to get done, even though Walmart had contracted with TDOT to do that road. But we had to have a secure feeling that that was going to be safe, because it couldn't be paved until the asphalt plants open up in April. So I talked to TDOT that evening. It was like about 4 o'clock on a Friday. And he said, Wayne, I have a $100,000 bond on that, and this is what we would expect them to do. So I went straight to the contractor for Walmart and told him what needed to be done in order for them to get to CO. So they agreed to get it done. If y'all remember, they raked out all the gravel on that side that Fred's and Dollar General and everything, Pizza Hut's on. They thought they was going to be able to go that route. And TDOT told me, said, no, Wayne, they're going to have a binder down and striped and the light working. So when I told Sam Blakeney that, he said, we'll get it done. He said, I know what TDOT expects, and we were within 48 hours of issuing the CO before we could finally do that. But it was a lot of coordinating that particular weekend with the as-built drawings that actually got the cold weather kind of knocked out their computers. So we were under a pretty tight schedule right there to get Walmart a CO, but we accomplished that, and and we do have Walmart to this day. Thank you.
I think I got out my notes. So I think the only other question I've asked to the other candidates was about grant experience. So kind of give us any grant experience that you might have had.
I don't have any personal grant experience except for what I've been running into here, and I think I've been bringing to y'all recognize the people here that has been doing the grants here. But I do now have the people in place with the certifications where we can qualify for grants. And so that's one thing that I will be looking into is every grant that we can come up with that'll help us. And, and I've been reading quite a bit on their processes. So the main thing was right now was to get these certifications so we can qualify for the state and federal grants.
I have just one more question. I don't know about everybody else. This has been a more difficult interview for me, not because you're a more difficult person, but because we all have some experience with you and have
Yes.
known you over the years. And you're a man of few words.
Yes, sir.
Do you consider that as a asset or a liability, and why?
I consider it an asset because I think you can open your mouth sometimes and say the wrong thing. And if you think about it and go straight to the point, I think you're better off by doing it that way.
Thank you. That's it, Mayor, for me.
I'm gonna go through some of the others. How do you facilitate quality community development while ensuring community objectives are satisfied?
Rephrase that again, Mayor.
Yeah, I'm thinking community development and keeping the community needs satisfied.
Okay, we heard a lot of those yesterday at the United Way of Community Needs. And one of those that I was concerned about was housing for the families that are out of their homes. And helping hand out food during Thanksgiving for Helping Hands. Some of the families that come through there were living in their cars. And that's dwelled on my heart an awful lot since then. And getting out and doing these type of things for the community, as I know all of y'all do, I think those are the type of things that we need to focus on in the future. Don't know where it's going to come from or how we can get help to do it, but there's got to be a way that we can look into it and see if there's any way for temporary housing or to at least in bad weather, be able to have a place to put them up for a short amount of time. So.
Well, in taking that question another direction, this morning you shared something about the Planning Commission last night and Taco Bell. Is there other instance, of course I know the Planning Commission actually voted, but I'm sure the city gave recommendations. And can you name any or give any examples of times that even though people may want Taco Bell, but you had to still honor the integrity of
our regulations.
Our regulations, yeah.
Yes, I'll briefly go through the Taco Bell last night. Actually, there was a mix-up on the first Planning Commission meeting. I left that up to the chairman of the Planning Commission to call a special meeting. They was here at 6 o'clock. The meeting was supposed to be at 7, so I was giving it the benefit of the doubt. So that's the reason to call a special meeting. Knowing how important it is to a lot of people in the city. I mean, if you poll 100 people, 98 of them want Taco Bell here. And the way I look at it too, the city will need revenue in the future. So anyway, that being said, last night at the meeting, they wanted a variance on an open detention pond in the front of the property, which is against our commercial regulations. So the Planning Commission did their job. They had good discussion on it. One of the, Matt Beata asked me to read the regulations, so I read the regulation into the record, which stated the very same thing. So they actually denied the variance last night. Well, by 9 o'clock this morning, Taco Bell's calling back, and they're going to go forward with the plan that had been approved. So as far as I know today, at this point in time, Taco Bell is on their way. So, but here again, we stood up to our regulations, and they come back. We had to follow our regulations. So I didn't see any other way to handle it other than what was on the regulations that we had.
No, ma'am.
Here for the last question, as we've asked all the candidates. Mr. Hall, why should we hire you as the next city manager of Fairview?
I think I can do the job, and I won't say I think. I know I can do the job. Like Commissioner Sutton asked me before, did I know the duties of the city manager? Yes, I did, but I was super nervous that day. I'm nervous today, but I'm a little more relaxed about it. But I don't believe you'll be disappointed. I really don't. I know that I don't have the education that probably some of the other interviewers you had, but I don't think they know the town like I know the town. I think I have the support of our employees, and I think if you get that in line, I think you've got everything going for you, because I think that's when you can do the best job for the citizens, is you know, the services that we perform for them. One other thing I'd like to say at this point in time, and this will be y'all's call, I personally don't think the city manager should have a $10,000 spending allowance. I think that should be lowered to $2,500. I know it might be more work for y'all, that I'll come back and I say I need to do this and I need to do that, but I have done that. I promised y'all that when I took the interim job, that if anything went over $2,500, I would come back to y'all for it. So, but that's one of my opinions, that I think that the city manager should not have, you know, and y'all may have a reason for it, but I'll leave that up to y'all's call.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.